Good evening. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board to order for Tuesday, May 6th at 7 p.m. If you'd all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, retiree, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue,
Here.
Trustee Pompo,
Here.
Trustee Durant,
Here.
Trustee Truscott,
Here.
Treasurer Johnson,
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Limata.
Here.
Staff President is Manager Gerard, Planner McCarthy, Mike Springer, John Marks, Fire Chief Bob Sims, Dave Wiegand, and Ora Jane Kennedy. And,
Municipal Council.
and Roger Zappa, Legal Counsel. A lot of people here tonight.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. As you know, the consent agenda are those items that typically do not require immediate board action. This evening has the approval of the prior meeting minutes of April 15th, received committee and other reports, including the Rec Committee report, draft meeting minutes from the Ad Hoc Iron Range Roll meeting, and the agenda for the special meeting of May 6th, a Fire Department officers draft meeting minutes for April 7th, Fire Department minutes from April 14th. Correspondence not requiring board action was a flyer from the Michigan Townships Association for MTA on the Road 2014 regional meetings. There was correspondence from Upset and their request for support to continue the battle against drugs in our neck of the woods. Bills payable this evening, the amount of $423,660.31, and the March 2014 financial statements and treasurer's report. Any board members wishing to remove any items for consent agenda for further discussion? Randy?
Just correction on the minutes on page 8. And I apologize to the board. I did send out a corrected copy of the minutes yesterday. For some reason, the corrected copy did not get to the secretary, so I did correct that, and it was emailed out to the board yesterday and posted on the website. So it should be correct in the packet now. Now, there was a few corrections on that in page 3, and I got this by trustee, correct person is Trustee Durant, and she sent me an email before the meeting and caught a few things, and so on page 3, the personnel has to be correctly spelled. On page 8, under board member comments, under Trustee Durant's, it'll be she and Treasurer Johnson attended that meeting. And under Supervisor Limata's comments, it will be commented about some of the future, not the some of the future. And John Mark's comments should be moved to public comment. And I will move to accept the consent agenda with the corrected minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as corrected. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the remainder of the agenda. I do have one request, and that would be that the forum discussion on board policies and procedures moves from item number 8A and becomes 13A, if that would be amenable.
I'll move to accept the agenda with that correction.
Support.
Motion and support. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. The agenda is approved. This will bring us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to address the board may do so at this time. First, last name at the podium.
Mike Springer, Eagles Nest Road, Chair of the Rec Committee. We just had a special Recreation Committee meeting tonight, and I'm pleased to say that the Rec Committee unanimously supported, to actively support the Iron Range Roll, which will be happening on June 7th. That was the same day we were planning a National Trails Day celebration at Swimwood Park. So instead of doing that, we've agreed to provide or help at the trailhead and support this event. There's 5 trailheads, and Schwimwood Park is one of them. This is going to be, it's a unique event because it's the first event of its type on the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. It's put together by a group of people called 40 Below, and they've been working on this for almost a year. This event is the first major event that we're going to have at Schwimwood Park, so we're really looking forward to it. We are going to need volunteers. We also are going to be requesting from the Planning Commission their support, and we will need some financial support for porta potties and hired professional law enforcement for the crossings. But more information will come later. I'm not asking the board for any decisions tonight, but after the Planning Commission has seen this, I would like the board to consider it and support that. This Saturday from 11 to 1, we're having a cleanup over at Schwimwood to take a look at the situation and also better plan for the Iron Range Roll. This trailhead that we have will be the end of the longest section of the relay, and then from here they go into Marquette Commons and finish the race there. So looking forward to doing a presentation after the Iron Range Roll on our involvement at the trailhead, and it looks like it's going to be something that we're going to see year after year. It's for a good cause, and it's the first program of its type. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. I'm Mary Davis, 3 Northwoods Lane, and I'm here to speak about the Peter White Library millage. As I've said in other talks with you, that I've been an elementary teacher, including here at Vandenboom School for many years, and one of our primary goals in education is to have a promotion of literacy. We want our children to grow up to be literate and competent, proficient readers. We want them to be able to make good decisions, to be able to have good jobs and to create new jobs. We want them to understand democracy and be able to exercise their vote. Now, to do that, children should be read to and be reading on a daily basis. They should have an opportunity to select books at their own level, but also to have an adult or another person read books to them at a higher level, because this helps develop their comprehension. Peter White Library offers a lot of programs, beginning with book babies and the toddler reading times, and then going up through the elementary and the high school students. And in addition to that, there's programs for the rest of us too, from young adults through senior citizens. There's opportunities for book clubs, plays, movies, discussion groups on a variety of activities, current topics, and classes that are offered. There are even classes offered for adults who are having trouble learning how to read. 2 years ago, I took a class in writing memoirs that was offered by one of the reference librarians. Today, some members of that class, including myself, are still meeting and having our own writing workshops and sharing our own stories. As a Finnish American, I'm always proud to say that the country of Finland believes that the minds of their people are their most important resource. I think Peter White Library gives us the opportunity to act on that belief right here in our own home community. So I would like us to show our commitment to Peter White Library by getting the millage on the November ballot for a period of 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Davis, also from 3 Northwood Lane. I'm going to be real quick. I'm going to speak on behalf and recommend the Peter White millage be on the ballot. Last time it was on the ballot, it passed with a 75% approval rating, which is probably one of the highest approval ratings we've had of any proposals on the ballot. The Peter White Library provides excellent service to our township residents, and I think that's shown by that 75% favorable vote last time. So encourage you to get it on the ballot for the longest period of time the millage would be allowed. I'm sure Roger would help, knows that answer, not me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Peters at 600 Brickyard Road, and I want to speak briefly in behalf of the library. There are a lot of things that we do where we don't pay admission, and I think the library is one of those places where you can go and hear a lot of different ideas and see exhibits and take classes, and I think it's a real asset to this whole county. There's no other place like it in the county, and I think it would be bad for us to be not to be a part of that support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Wiegand, 350 Brookton Road. I'd like to reserve some time on 9B, and I guess I'd like to reserve it towards the end because I'm not sure what the discussion's going to be on that. And then I'd be here to answer any questions you might have on 10D, the crack ceiling.
Excuse me. Robert Sims, 2662 Montgomery. I'm not here for the library, but what I'm asking is, I've been trying to get my road in front of my house gravelled for the last few years. I've been to the county, I've been to the township, and I've been to the road committee, and some board members been down and looked at it. I figure if I start now, maybe I'll have a chance to get it done this year. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Bob. We'll take it up.
Sherry Johnson, 2272 Cherry Street. I'm here about the road on Fair Avenue, where it's in the township where we don't have it paved, and it's really rough. And one time there was two things there showing that there was two spots, but not the third, and the third one I didn't know, and I went down really hard with my car. I'm lucky I didn't wreck it. But that really needs to be taken care of. I know it keeps the traffic slower on Fair Avenue because of it, but the weather's finally getting nice where I think it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Mike Beck, 1005 Alloway in Marquette. Just asking to reserve time on 9A.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and we will move to board member comment. I do want to remind the board members before we move into comment that we'd like to keep the comments down to 3 minutes during the first board member comment if at all possible. And who wants to go first? Dan?
I'm just want to make a quick report from the fire department officers meeting last night, just to let everyone know that on the 14th of June, starting between 7 and 8 o'clock, there will be a mass casualty exercise at the Westwood Mall. And it should be over with by noon before the mall opens up. But just in case everybody's wondering what all the vehicles and everything else out there will be, it's just a exercise. And one of the questions that was brought up, and I wasn't sure the answer, is who is the township's public information officer?
Well, if you, if that's a great question. Yeah. If you look into the even the emergency operations plan, and it's going to end up being either on my shoulders or Randy's, so depending on what you know, if you need something done, I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
it's just, I think during the plan that the Public Information Office is probably going to be notified as part of the plan.
Okay.
So they just want to know who they notify. So I figured between one of the two of you, but I wasn't sure which one it was.
Okay. Peter?
We talked about roads tonight. We could just come out of a meeting with, about roads, and some of the residents has talked about how bad the roads are. I just want to make a point that they're on the corner of Fair and Vanderboom. It's a sharp corner there, but it's being undermined, and so it's very dangerous. So I think we should have, I'll talk to Randy after. I didn't get time to talk to him earlier, but the residents, when they're driving around Fair and Vanderboom, it'd be the southeast corner. It's dropping off, it's being undermined, so just be careful. I've been saying it all winter about this, the shoulders of roads are getting bad, and they are bad, so just be careful. You don't pull off the side road without knowing what you're pulling off on. So, and we are making, the road committee been working on it, moving on to the planning commission and then further on to the board about road repairs, so we are working on that problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Clerk Rattari?
Yeah, if you looked in your consent agenda tonight, under the correspondence not requiring board action, there was a memo asking for support from Upset. Just so everyone knows, we did budget this year, and actually it was in this bill's payable, that we did give them $1,000 for their activities. So just so the residents know that we do support that, and we did donate some money this year for that cause. And I remember Treasurer Johnson pretty adamantly in the budget sessions trying, getting money for them. So just so the residents know, we did do that.
Thanks, Clerk Rattari. Just a couple brief comments. First, May is Motorcycle Awareness Month, and I always like to remind folks that look twice, save a life. While we haven't seen a lot of motorcycles out yet due to the weather, the life you save may be mine, so I would strongly encourage you to look twice at every intersection. Sometimes, whenever you see an accident's occurred, the one thing that's very common amongst all of it is the fact that people say, I just didn't see the bike. And while we try to be as visible as possible riding, just a little extra precaution goes a long way. As soon as the warm weather hits, more people will be rolling them down their driveway. The other thing is that the Lions Field Recreation Area ball field has resumed action, weather permitting also. The JV, MSHS JV girls are playing out there, and I know they've had a couple of games. And Little League schedule will be finalized and submitted in tomorrow, and I believe their games start somewhere around the 15th. And I just want to remind folks, as you're going through the Trowbridge area, that there's excited ball players getting out of cars and moving towards the ball field, and just take a little bit of extra precaution, especially as the vehicles are parked there. We do have plans. In fact, they're over along the side of the room there, that shows what our vision is, and that will be discussed later this evening. But until that parking is in better shape and the road's abandoned and we can make it a little bit safer, I would just ask folks to take a little bit extra precaution. That having been said, if there's no other board member comments, we'll close board member comment and begin to move into the regular agenda. But also this evening, I'd like to ask board members, just remember that please be recognized before we start speaking. I'm trying to moderate the meetings a little bit more. I'd like to remind you that we really don't have a discussion unless there's a motion before us. One of the things I'd ask we consider as we move forward is that if we're not prepared to make a motion and we want to just have discussion, is that a board member makes a motion to suspend the rules for discussion purposes, so that we can just move into a discussion. It just helps us keep more organized and keeps us on track. I'm trying to shorten the length of our meetings and make them more cohesive, and perhaps we'll increase our viewership and attendance if we can accomplish those goals. This evening's forum discussion was moved down, so we're going to start off with 9A, consider the bicycle route signage on County Road 550. I know in your packet, Planner McCarthy put a number of things, including the map, in so that we would have the ability to see exactly what we're talking about doing here. And this really came about from Mr. Beck, who had asked us to consider increasing now that County Road 550 had some repairs done, especially along that area from Sugarloaf Mountain and moving more north as a result of the improvements that the Marquette County Road Commission was making through last year and are still working on this year. Jason does have a proposed draft of a letter to send to Jim Iwaniki from the Marquette County Road Commission in your packet that talks about extending the bike route and some of the key reasons for it. Most notably, because the paved shoulder was widened to 4 feet, thus meeting the state of Michigan requirements for a designated bike route. Also, the extension of the bike route would allow for safe access to key natural, cultural, and recreational assets within the township, as well as state of Michigan forest lands in the area. The additional bike route signs would create added awareness for bike users and would mitigate current parking pressures at trailheads and other recreational parking lots along County Road 550. Mr. Beck, you did ask for time, and if you'd approach the podium now, that'd be great.
Mike Beck from Marquette, just talking a little bit about the proposed bike route that the Board of Trustees are considering here. I just want to say that I think that extending the bike route designation to make an official bike route out to where it's been suggested out past Eagles Nest Road there works well with recreational opportunities for people here in the township. It's been shown that when you do put a bike route along a road like that, it does tend to increase safety because it increases the awareness from the motorists and vehicle users that there will be other modes of traffic on it. So what this type of designation could do would be actually to increase overall roadway safety along that section of the route, because motorists and truck drivers would then be aware that there would be more varied uses of the road. But I certainly encourage you to do that. During the winter here, I had a petition out at Phil's 550 store and a couple other locations here in Marquette, sport locations, and I was able to we collected 370 signatures of support for this, and I'd like to deliver a copy of this to the clerk right now.
That's fantastic.
Petition. So 370 residents of the township, the city, the county, and visitors to the community signed this petition. They just had some comments, make the route safer for them. Some people that live in the township along the highway do commute by bike, and there were some comments there to increase the safety for their bike commute for township residents. I think that the greatest support was from Phil's 550 store, which shows that there's a lot of local support from the township residents that live out there. But I urge you to consider it. I think it would increase the value of the the Marquette Township in the future going forward, and thanks for giving it some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know you've read, we had the letter from Mr. Beck, as well as you saw the map, and then saw the letter from Jason. I just want to open it up for the board. What's your pleasure, and do we want to make a motion to proceed and keep everything moving? You saw the press release that Jason was issuing out, and we really want to highlight the thing and encourage it. We are a very bikeable community, as we're all well aware, and whether it be road bikes or mountain bikes, we certainly would do everything, I think, in Marquette Township's power to be able to sustain that. So I would open that up to the board for Dan.
Well, like you said, I think we've been trying to make us a bikeable community since we've been here, and I think this is a good start, especially going for 550. I would make the motion to proceed with designating as a bike route.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Dan. Any other comments? Anyone?
By designating a bike route, we're sending a letter to the county road commission that, being they don't have any money, something like that, back to us, and that, as far as funding us then.
I know Planner McCarthy has had a conversation with Jim, and I can we'll let Planner McCarthy answer your question, Ernie.
The only additional cost is the small green signs.
So very nominal cost. Anyone else? Diana? Lynn?
No, I think it's a great idea. I wasn't sure if this was a draft or if it was really gone already. Okay, that's all right. No, I support it.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. I know I talked with Mr. Beck briefly at a city meeting one evening, and I kept it on the back burner for getting it on it as an agenda item, and then suddenly spring was here before I knew it. And so we better act quick and get the signs up. But like everything else, actually the bikers have actually been out in full force, unlike softball players and motorcycle riders for some reason. But I support it as well. And if there's no other board discussion, we do have a motion and a second to approve, and Planner McCarthy is prepared to move forward. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Beck. Jason, you have any idea like how long it would take for the signs to come in and before they would be up?
Within 30 days.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is 9B. Discuss the conceptual plan for Lions Field Recreation Area. I know Dave Wiegand has asked to reserve time, and I will get to that, Dave. Decided to put this in the agenda actually because the plan came back from the rec committee and last year, and they had UP engineers and architects do the conceptual plan for them as they were working through it. We've been talking about it for a long time about what it is that we want to do with the park, and it was time for it to get to the board and have the board weigh in on the conceptual plan for Lions Park, especially in light of the fact that not only has the board been putting aside money for the last 4 or 5 years as we continued to make our improvements. We did the ball field, we redid the pavilion, we sought the abandonment of Erie Avenue, and I think Roger can probably provide us with an update on that process. But it's time for us, if this is the direction we're going to move in based upon the final concept plan from the rec committee, that we have to give Manager Gerard some indications about how to move forward if we were going to be able to put the ice rink together this year. We probably need to begin plans for preparation and ordering, as well as the warming shack. We did receive a grant from Cliffs Lundeen that Planner McCarthy had put together a request and sent in, and we got word that we actually did receive a grant for $100,000 to complete that warming shack, which certainly moves us much farther along the lines of our goals. In your packet, you did see the idea of what this entire plan would cost, some of those costs put together by your rec committee. And of course, was just off the top of my head without scrolling down, was $500,000 for the entire wish list, which sounds like an incredible amount of money. But when you look at it, we're going to have one of the finest residential parks in the community when this is finished, and I believe it won't be at $500,000, especially in light of the grant that we received, as well as additional grants that we're pursuing to complete those things. But I know Trustee Pompo has asked quite a bit about even the kids' park, Kitty Park, because we'd set aside the money and said that we were prepared to move forward. And we haven't had this conceptual plan in front of the board to say, yes, we're doing it, we need to move forward. And so I wanted to get it on the agenda and get it in front of the board. And if there's other comments, if it needs to be sent back to the rec committee for additional planning or direction, this would be the time to do it so that we could have it back in front of us within a couple of weeks, hopefully, and be able to move and give Manager Gerard the okay to begin the purchasing process. So I'll open it up for the board. Dan?
Well, once again, I'm going to put my 2 cents in for the ice rink. I have a problem. For all the years we've been putting ice rinks in out there, this size of ice rink to handle hockey as well as ice skating, I think is too small. And in all honesty, most of our use of the ice surfaces that we've put up lately have always been for hockey, although there has been some ice skaters themselves. But again, it's for what it's worth. I just think that that particular rink is too small for that. As well as the the children's park, I like I said before, I know we have put money aside, and I know this probably should be started this year also, I would think. I think we've, once this final approval of this plan, I would like to see that move particularly fast. I know that we have our outdated equipment there that's been there for quite a while, and I think we're probably overdue to have a nice children's playground area.
I think with the layout we have, we're trying to squeeze a lot of things into a small park, you know. If we had more land, probably could we do something, but this isn't just for the hockey players, it's for everybody. In proportion, I think it looks like it's a little busy, but it's not. So I think we can make it all work. The kiddie part, I believe that we can get that done. The warming shack should be done this year. And maybe it's not exactly what we want for everything, but it don't mean it has to be there for everybody. We can have another area for something else later on or something like that, but it's a good start. And I think we should move this right on through and get it going. We can still take in people, their suggestions and stuff like that, and we still look at it, but there's some areas that we can leave it like they are and go from there.
Thanks, Pete. Ernie?
Like I've always said when I looked at all of this and that, and before when we were originally talking about is parking. I look at, we got 60 spots in that, somewhere in that vicinity in that, and if we get any kind of activity in there, that 60 spots is not going to be anywhere near sufficient to handle everything in that. And so that's one of the things I'm concerned with in that. The other concern I have, we had talked about and had been brought up and discussed about having a covering over the ice rink for summer activities in that. And I don't see any relationship, anything here at this point in time that is be able to have any type of covering for that, for the ice rink and that. So that's one of the things we had talked about, and I thought was to move forward with that. So the other thing, when you're looking at the costs, and here I go back to dollars all the time, I just need to know myself where all this money's coming from. We have some money set aside for the kiddie park and that. Now we got $100,000, which we just found out about tonight, with a total budget of $593,000 set and looking at it. What is the procedure and what's going to be done first, and where's the money coming from for each one of them and that? I think just by saying, okay, we accept the concept, we'll move forward. I'm not moving forward until someone tells me where all the money's coming from and how it's going to be handled in that. So we know which projects are going to be done first and how it's going to be done in that. So there's too many uncertainties coming up in the financial future of the township right now to be looking forward for a lot of these expenditures and that. That's my feeling of that.
Diana?
I like the concept of the drawing. I think it's, very nice. The ice rink, I think, I agree with Dan, I think it's just a little bit too small for, to have both. Playing hockey, and then if you have other people on the rink, I just think it's gonna be a little bit too small. But other than that, I think it's a, good use of space.
Lynn?
Well, the first thing I thought of was the cost. When we looked at this a few years ago and we were talking about putting $90,000 into it, I thought that was kind of excessive. We backed that off, and we saved some money for the last 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of wishy type things on here I think we could put off. I'm not saying we wouldn't do them, but I think if we can pay for it as we go along with budgeted funds and whatever grants we get, that's pretty awesome from Lundin. We didn't know about that. But oddly enough, I think I'm trying to conceptualize, and short of walking it off, how big the skating rink is. I thought it was kind of big. I thought it was kind of excessive. I mean, unless you're going to have actual teams playing on there, I don't know that. I mean, it's as big as the ball field, the inside of the ball field.
It's 70 by 150
Can't
in this
picture that.
in this proposed plan. The rink that we've had up for the last 3 years over there was 60 by 130. So it's, the one that's been there was 60 by 130. This one would be 10 feet wider. It's going to be oriented differently east to west instead of north to south, but 10 feet wider and 20 feet longer than the existing rink.
So we're just, who's going to use this? Isn't this kids? It's nothing,
It's kids, it's a
Nothing like
community ice rink, exactly.
but it wouldn't be like organized, like the kids are using the ball field from the high school. I don't know, it just seemed like it took up a lot of the park, and I was thinking it could be smaller. There's not really a lot. I think it called for 8 park benches. That doesn't seem like a whole lot. You get 10, 15 families in there on an average weekend. I think we need more people space. We've got a little area for the kids' playground, about the size of the infield. Lots of trees. Kids like open spaces to run. I don't know. Those are my concerns. The money, and I think the pad needs to be smaller, a little more open space. That's what I'm thinking.
Secretary?
Well, I like the conceptual design. The hockey rink is almost there. It's not quite big enough. A small regulation rink's 80 by 185, so you're actually not too far from those dimensions where you're at now. I envision this, and I do agree with Treasurer Johnson, we have to watch the money on this, but I would envision we would do this in phases, because it's a big chunk of money to bite off right away. And I envision, and this is my comments into the conceptual plan, is when we do the ice rink, that we do some forward looking and make enough room there for a cover down the road or a pavilion over that. The issue is you make it bigger, you got problems in the park with the space. So I think it's okay where it's at now. It's bigger and more formal than a lot of rinks to our east right now. They don't have any boards at all, so this would be a pad with boards, and it'd be lighted, and it'd be a pretty nice rink, even if it isn't quite that big. But that would be my envision, is we build this with a future look of maybe putting a cover over it. And if you go bigger, that could jeopardize that down the road. You're just not going to have enough room to do it with the setbacks and such. So with that said, I like it the way it is. I don't know about I know there's horseshoe pits there. It's going to be more of a multi-generational park versus just so I think those folks that enjoy that activity would enjoy that. And I guess that's all I have to say. I do like the concept, and it can be tweaked. It isn't, the final yet, so that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Randy. I'm going to have Planner McCarthy weigh in too, since he was very involved in this process along with the rec committee. But some brief comments just to some of the concerns expressed by the board members. Remember our joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and the talk revolved around the CIP, and the reason that we want to do some long-range planning on capital improvement projects. This is one of those that would fall in there. And so how the process goes, as we're developing a plan and getting our recommendations from the rec committee, they're saying, here's our vision of what we can put into that park to make it multi-generational, and there's something in there for everyone. You take it from there and you say, we've been phasing it in, but as we work to improve our capital improvements program and really talk about our planning, and as we do a little bit deeper dive in that with the Planning Commission later this year, these are those projects that will get listed onto a CIP, and they'll be graded, A, B, C, D, have to have, nice to have, like to have, or, hey, this is a big stretch, a big wish. So what happens with some of those as you start to prioritize them, it may be the roof over, a pavilion roof over the rink surface. We all agree that we would like it. It would offer some benefits to weather. If somebody wants to reserve the park for a family reunion, they don't have to worry about rainouts because there's a bigger pavilion with a roof over it. But it would be one of those projects that would get listed in the CIP with a 6 to 10 year time frame. We currently have just shy of $200,000 available to us to spend to move forward on some of the projects that we can certainly get done this year. Our initial plan as a board for the Kitty Park was to spend the money this year and complete Kitty Park, and I think that we need to move forward with something. We've got $200,000 at our disposal, and yes, our revenue stream is uncertain, or we're under attack a little bit from Lansing. The Court of Appeals opinion didn't go our way, and we'll discuss that later in this meeting. But let's not lose sight of the flavor of what we're doing. If we have to delay some of these as we move forward, we'll delay them based on those realities. But in order to move forward, we have to have a plan so that we can put it into the CIP and then start to budget and plan accordingly. And then the questions of where will the money come from are answered in that CIP. But we can't, if we never approve a plan to move forward, then we can't even get it in the CIP, nor can we budget accordingly. And I think the board really needs to, we either send it back to the rec committee if you're very, got big concerns with this, or we approve the conceptual plan and change it as we go forward. And that's my thoughts on it. But Jason, please, if you've heard what the board had to say and some of the concerns that they have, and if you can take a stab at addressing those, that would be great.
All good comments. The suggested size of the rink came from some experience of me working in Ashland, Wisconsin, where men's slow puck league built a rink over in Ashland, and that was a size that was requested by the kids because they didn't want to skate the whole length of the ice, but they still wanted to play games. So they basically shrunk neutral ice, and you have offensive and defensive zone, and the game really flows really well. I did scale out a full-size rink, and in that the way that it's situated here, really wouldn't work with the rest of the plan. And that goes back to kind of an old adage that I was taught early on as a planner, and that is that a good plan now is better than a better plan later. For us to have this conceptual plan, which is a professionally engineered plan, the cost associations are all fairly accurate with today's numbers. I guess I'd just like to ask that the board support something to move forward so that we can show that we're doing some work in this area. One of the arguments about government is that things move so slow, but in this case, the Recreation Committee really put something together in short order for both Schwemmwood and Lions Field. And although we submitted grant applications for both parks, Cliffs Lundin supported that old school urban neighborhood type park. And kudos to them for doing that. That is a large sum of money to be donated towards this project. The grant application was written for the warming shack, although I don't think it's going to take $100,000 to build a warming shack. And so there's money out there to utilize in other areas of the park to show more work. Certainly a phased approach is adequate in this situation. There's going to have to be some work on grading and earthwork. And if you're able to just put in, the kiddie park and the ice rink this year, perhaps the rest of the park gets seeded and mulched, and designed out a little bit and graded for those next phases. So it still shows open space. With regard to the comment about trees, these are full-grown canopies displayed here, so these trees will not be at that maturity level right away. One of the things that we wanted to focus on was the screening for the adjacent neighbors, to create a gateway entrance, coming up north on Erie. And just a couple other things about ice rinks. The one that we created in Washburn the year before we did the one in Ashland had such tremendous community support that when you walked into the warming shack, there were helmets up along the top. There were ice skates all along the bottom, and there were hockey sticks in trash barrels that you could just go and grab because people donated all that stuff for the kids to use. I strongly feel that we can accomplish the same thing here in Marquette with, it's a much bigger community, and it's an even bigger hockey town. The smaller basketball court area, in my opinion, could be a small general skating rink. A lot of times you have kids skating and playing hockey. A girl that wants to go out there and practice figure skating is not going to want to be out there necessarily with the boys, but you don't want to exclude those people either. So it doesn't really cost a whole lot more to flood another small rink. And the warming shack could be situated in between the two, and you could actually freeze the sidewalk portion in the winter to get to the rink from the warming shack. I think that was the majority of the comments, but we could really get a lot done this year should the board move forward and give staff some direction so that we can get moving on it. First and foremost is the abandonment, the formalization of the abandonment of the road. And then, we've talked to Oberstar. I've requested that he provide a portion of the materials for the concrete slab as a donation. He agreed to do that. So there's other ways to offset that $500,000 and some odd $1,000 cost. We're already down to $400,000, and we haven't even begun yet because we received a large grant. If we show progress and we keep moving forward, I sincerely believe that we'll continue to receive more support in that grassroots type of effort that this park has enjoyed for a number of years.
Thank you, Jason. And Dave, you had time reserved, and I'll give you that now.
Just a couple quick comments about the park and the layout of the park. Is the general concept was that this is a community park. I mean, it's not for organized hockey or basketball or anything else. It's a place for the residents of the township to gather and to have various events. I mean, because everybody doesn't like to skate, everybody doesn't like to play basketball. We did the conceptual drawing, was done last year. We've been waiting for a couple things to happen, and one of them was this Cliffs Lundin grant that came through. The other thing that we've been waiting to happen is the closure of Erie Street, which, if I understand right, is still waiting for the circuit court action. And then we're still waiting to hear from a passport grant application, which will come sometime later in the year. There's a lot of things that are hanging right on the precipice of something happening, and to see this $100,000, we have a lot of work ahead of us. The rec committee does, to see if we can get something done this year with that warming shed. And like Jason said, it's not going to cost near $100,000 to put that warming shed up. There's dozens and dozens of volunteer people out there that have a very keen interest in what happens at Lions Field. And you're going to find, you'll be amazed at the number of people that are going to step forward and volunteer material and time to make sure that this comes together. And I will be surprised if you end up spending half of that proposed $500,000 to get this done. And you got to remember, it's stretched out over 5 years. And the concept drawing is just that. I mean, we've got the money now to do the warming shed. We planned on doing the kiddie park this year. If you need to tweak some things down the road in the concept drawing, that's why they call it a concept drawing. The biggest thing we need to move forward with now is if we're going to go ahead with the warming shed this year, is we need to get a firm set of plans for the warming shed so that we can start figuring out how we're going to bid that. And I mean, the last thing you want to do with something like that is put it out for bid and have somebody come in and do that, because that's not what community is about. We can put the warming shed up, and we can do it at minimal cost. And there's people just standing in the wings out there waiting for that to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. So to the board, what you've heard from Planner McCarthy and Dave Wiegand, that it's kind of at a point where can we put the plan forward? I know Ernie's always going to ask, where's the money coming from? And and I appreciate that, because we all need to know it. But again, if we put the plan first and then we start to put it into a CIP and a multi-year plan, but I think what you're hearing is that we're here, we've put aside money for the last, several years for Kitty Park. They're prepared to move forward. The board just needs to approve a conceptual plan, and it'll still be phased in over multiple years. It's not like we're going to be able to put it in. If you approve the conceptual plan, does not mean you're approving the expenditure of $500,000. It means you're approving the plan as the final conceptual plan that you have before you. As we expend money to do things, whether it's to do the ice rink and the warming shack at this point, those will come before the board as different items each time it comes up. So I think that's important to remember as a board, is that you still have ultimate approval as we move forward. You'll have to approve the plans for the warming shack. Clearly the expenditure is going to be there because we got a grant to do it, up to $100,000. But if we don't spend as much on the warming shack, some of that can offset the costs of the ice rink. And we have been putting aside money for the ice rink as well as the Kitty Park. You do remember Manager Gerard during the budget time, is telling us that he's prepared to move on the ice rink and the Kitty Park this year with the money that we had budgeted. The $100,000 just makes it much more feasible, but the board's pleasure here. I mean, I would entertain a motion to do any number of things, but I'll leave that to the board. Pete?
Well, take in mind that this is a residential area and it's done in phases. And just one thing that is so important to get this conceptual drawing approved tonight, because when the road comes out, the blacktop, we discussed with the road committee, that could be used for the foundation of the ice rink. And we have discussed putting a roof over the top, so I just think, it's setting in a residential area. We've got to be sort of watch how much noise we have and everything else. And so I'll make a motion that we approve the conceptual drawing before us tonight.
Thanks, Pete. Is there a second?
I'll second it with all of this new information that came out.
Okay. Pete, anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Ben?
No, thank you.
Board members?
I just
Ernie?
go back to, I think Lynn brought it up, doing it in phases is what we've been talking about. And looking at what can be done at the beginning and coming back to us as to what actions they're going to take and what the projected costs will be for them. And that as we move forward on that too. Because I'm just going through like the site demolition, the site grading, chain link fence, the signage. These are the things that come out first. So if you can start pulling those things out, they'll be done first. And as we move down the line, you keep adding the others to them as we move forward on that. That's what I'm looking for. So then we have a better control as the finances that we're looking for in the future. That's it.
Thanks, Ernie. Anyone
Dennis?
else? Dan?
The Kitty Park is not going to be a problem. The warming shed is not going to be a problem this year. My concern is that the ice rink, from the way it's drawn, will be into Erie Street. So we're kind of at a standstill till we get Erie Street. We can't really do anything with that ice rink until Erie Street's abandoned. So, I mean, obviously it wouldn't make much sense to have a warming shack without an ice rink, but I guess that's obviously what we're going to have to look at. I mean, those two are obviously funded already, so I don't have a problem with that whatsoever.
Thanks. Clerk Rattari, anything?
Well, hopefully that Erie Street problem gets taken care of, and then we can move forward on that. I guess that would be a linchpin in the ice rink part of things, but.
We'll have Roger up in a moment to answer that question for us. Jason?
Just going to add that, all of these things can work in stereo. It's going to take a little bit of time to get the road abandoned, but it's going to take probably more time to get you guys to the budget that you want to see for the phase that'll happen this year, line item budget of what you need to see to approve, and then to get everything ordered and in place pretty lickety split here. So that we do need some lead time in being able to produce those documents, as well as bid documents and everything else, should they need to be bid out, or if we decide to do it in-house and with that grassroots effort that we have enjoyed out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Roger, if you wouldn't mind.
Dennis, I wonder if you could put the breakdown of the costs on the screen while he's talking, so it's a matter of record too. So that people
In
can see
order
it.
to complete the Erie Avenue abandonment, we've got to have an order amending the plat. Everything that we can do at this point is done on that, and where it's at is it is sitting on the Attorney General's desk. We have to have approval from either the Attorney General or Assistant Attorney General on any plat amendment, and it has been down in Lansing for weeks and weeks and weeks. Once, and I call regularly to just rattle the chain. I spoke with one of the Assistant Attorneys General last week, and he assures me it's moving up on his stack, but nothing has essentially happened. Once we get that consent judgment completed, essentially approved by the Attorney General, the ducks are in order already from the other people who have to approve that, essentially. I would estimate within 30 days of receiving notification or approval from the Attorney General, we can have the order entered and we can tear up pavement and we can move forward completely. Unfortunately, I don't have much control or ability to predict how fast the folks in Lansing move. I am advised that there are a number of these things and everybody wants them done by spring for the construction season. I am operating by the adage that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so I'm calling weekly. So
Would legislative intervention help us in any way, shape, or form from our local legislators?
probably not materially.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt, but I rather doubt that it's going to move it up that quickly because we're in the same position as a whole bunch of other municipalities, and it is where it is.
Okay. So we don't have a definitive answer as far as...
We don't, but the good news is, once it happens in Lansing, we can move very quickly.
Okay.
Because everything has been done in advance in anticipation of that being completed.
Thank you, Roger. Lynn, go ahead.
Roger, if we actually started this on our own as far as the park part that we can do, like Kitty Park, because the stuff we're already going to start, does that have any impact? Can you say we've already started the process as far as we can go? And, even show them.
I've actually represented that we've got a conceptualization in place that we'd like to move forward with.
Now it's
I don't have a
board
copy of
approved.
it now. If we're approving it, I think that
I
would
think
be
that'll
helpful.
help.
I can take a copy of that and send it down tomorrow for that matter. And in terms of the first part of the question, putting up the kiddie park in place, for example, or the warming shack, we can move forward with that. I would be reluctant to start tearing up pavement at this point when we don't have the order
Right.
specifically finalizing that.
It's on the other side of where the
But we
line would
already,
be.
we
so-
already own the property on both sides of the 60-foot right-of-way, and we can do anything we want with that. One of the issues that's before the Attorney General that's of absolutely no consequence to the township, but which they seem to be spending a fair amount of time scratching their head over, is whether it makes sense, how the lots will be renumbered. Because since it is a plat, they are numbered consecutively, and they're questioning whether it should all be one big lot or whether it should be divided up somehow other than it is. And the response that I've given them is, whatever suits their fancy, we really don't care. We just want the order that finalizes it. And if they want it in 7 lots or 1 lot or 4 lots, it makes no difference one way or the other from us. But from a plat management standpoint, that's something that they're apparently spending a fair amount of time addressing.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the conceptual plan to give the manager Gerard and the rec committee the go-ahead to start doing some of the next steps in finalizing it. If there's no other concerns or comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Roger, for your work on it, and especially Planner McCarthy and the Rec Committee members. We really appreciate it. Next item on your agenda is consider appointments to committee vacancies. They were handed out in a packet just prior to the meeting, as the folks who expressed interest didn't all have their applications filled out, and you'll see that there's a couple that do not as of yet, but we can still move forward with appointments based upon either the letter or emails received noting their interest. The first ones in front of you are the DDA, and we have two candidates for positions. And Randy, do you want to refresh the board's memory? I'm trying to find my sheet, but right now with the DDA, we've not been able to put a quorum together, as many meetings as we've called. And how many spots are we really considering that we should have filled with the DDA?
We have one actual vacancy and two other members that have indicated inability to make the meetings. So we technically have 3 positions that could be filled.
Okay. So based on that information, the two that are before you in the DDA is the supervisor appointed board, Todd Nordyke, who you're all very familiar with from Great Lakes Radio, and the events committee. Why do you want to serve on the board? I love this township. I view it as the fastest growing in the state of Michigan. Glowing recommendation. And the other one was Brian Jensen, who is from the Comfort Suites or Spirit Oasis, and very interested in the direction that the Marquette Township is developing. I've seen a lot of very positive changes, and I'd like to contribute. He is the general manager of the Comfort Suites and Days Inn since August of 2000, and director of operations for Spirit Oasis since 2009. So I would ask that the board consider both Mr. Jensen and Mr. Nordyke for positions with the DDA. Yep.
This is for the manager, Gerard. The positions that are open, are they individuals that have to live within the, or live, work, or reside within the DDA? And how many are in that position and how many outside that? Which one is which?
No, we're basically in a posture where they simply have to have an interest of some sort in the township, either be a property owner, be involved in management, or own property within. It doesn't even have to be within the DDA.
Okay. 4 years. Randy, those are 4-year terms?
I believe they are, yes.
Dan?
I would make the motion to appoint Todd Nordnyk and Brian Jensen to the DDA.
Support. Support.
Motion and support. Any board member comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Jensen, Mr. Nordyke, for your interest and willingness to serve. The other vacancies that we have to fill are the one appointment on the ZBA. As you know, the Zoning Board of Appeals lost a member with Dave Wiegand when he became a Planning Commission member, and Steve Pelto is the Planning Commission rep. You cannot have 2 reps from the Planning Commission on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We haven't had any appeals to the ZBA this year, but the position should be filled. We do have 2 applicants. We had initially we had an applicant, Bill Truscott. Everybody knows Bill. Not only is he Diana's father, but also has served the township in the past, is currently an ad hoc member of the Roads Committee. His letter, as you can see, is about communicating his thoughts when appropriate, has been encouraging and rewarding experience, retired, has the time to serve on call when the board meets, if I'm fortunate enough to be appointed, my role will be of value, being the only member serving on the board by a long-term resident from the Trowbridge Park community. Please accept my consideration, my request. And the second one was Mike Fedrizzi, who had talked to Manager Gerard concerning the availability opening in the ZBA, and he had requested a copy of the bylaws with the functions and responsibilities. Those were received. He has indicated that he would submit the application. I anticipated that it would be delivered today, but we didn't see it back, although he is interested in serving. And I don't know how many of you know Mike Fedrizzi, but he does have quite a bit of experience back in the financial institution as well now with healthcare, and is also a longtime resident of Marquette Township. So before you, you have two candidates for the one position for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And it'll be up, this is a board appointment, so it'll be a motion by a board member to appoint one over the other, or if you want to suspend the rules and just have discussion of either candidate, whatever the board's pleasure is. Trustee LaRue?
I'd like to make a motion, we nominate Mike Parisi for that position. Give us some young ideas, new blood. He's got a good financial background, and I think he'd be great on the committee. So that's my motion to approve him.
Is there a second?
Support.
Motion and support. Dan?
Well, failing to see an application, I don't know that I could vote. I don't know him personally, so I would, I'd like to, I'm sure he's probably fine for it, but I would like to see an application before I make a decision.
We don't have an application from either candidate, but it's not that it is unprecedented. We've done it in the past, but I understand. Pete, other comments as a motion maker?
No, I just think for a younger guy to come into us, dedicate many hours of his life to help him with the township. Financially, he's got some good background, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and maybe some young ideas. Some as we get older, we need someone to come up, and you don't know where you can go from there. So I'm kind of excited to have him aboard if we can.
Thanks, Pete. Other comments? Clerk Rattari as a second.
I have none. Whoever we choose, though, or whoever we select, we should have an application on file.
Okay. Ernie, go ahead.
Just have a comment on the gentleman's Mike Flizzi, whatever his last name is.
Flizzi.
As far as financial on that, when you start looking at what the Zoning Board of Appeals is, what it is when the Planning Commission does not accept a site plan or something like this, or does not accept what's being presented, and they don't like it, they go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what it amounts to is looking at what the Planning Commission did, and should they overrule that and that. It's not financial or not new ideas or anything else. It's a whole different ballgame than that. It's not the Planning Commission and that. So I look at it that way, and that, and need someone, to me, is someone that's lived in the township a long time to see what's going on, because we don't know what's going to happen when the appeal comes to the Zoning Board of Appeals from wherever for whatever and that. So I have that's why I look at this here, and I look at Mr. Trescott. He's been here a long time. He's been involved with a lot, so he has a fairly good idea what's happening within the township too. So I look at it from that point in time.
Lynn?
Anytime we've had people come before us for appointments, I've always interviewed them. I just feel that if we're going to put them under the limelight and put ourselves on the line, we need to know, we need to have a good feeling about what we're making the appointment for, whether it's a recommendation from the chairman or not, or the supervisor. I didn't interview Mr. Wigan the last time he applied, but I had talked to him previously when he applied for another committee appointment. I know Todd and Brian personally. I've worked with both of them. I've been on boards with them. I think they're both great. I would have wanted to interview them if there was only one position open, just because I would want to know more about how they felt about that position. I usually make up a list of questions. I know Bill, just in passing from here, I don't know anything about how he feels about the ZBA, because as Treasurer Johnson said, that's a whole different ballgame with the ZBA. That's a legal entity that will override what the local planning commission has already said. They have power that no other part of the municipality has. It's a very important position. I know Mike Fedrizzi from 30 years ago. I haven't talked to him since. I don't know if he lives in the township or has an interest here. Apparently he does if he's applying. But I would not feel comfortable recommending either of these people myself without talking to them.
Diana?
I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Well, right now, you're only considering the motion, which is for Mike Fedrizzi, so.
And to be all honest, I don't really know him either, only from, you know.
So I'm not making you comment on your father.
We can.
That would be unfair. Dan?
And going back to the, like Lynn said, this is the one committee that has power over us, and I think it's a very important committee to actually be. I would feel better if I like Lynn at least interviewed both of the people to find out exactly, because it's a big responsibility. Not that they meet that often, but or I really don't know the last time they did meet, but when they do meet, they're an entity to themselves. They can make the rules. So it's. The next step after them is the Court of Appeals. So.
No, Circuit Court.
A Circuit Court, so.
Manager Gerard, you want to weigh in?
If I may, Supervisor Lehman, I know both individuals. I'm familiar with both of them. What I would suggest is, since we have an application from neither, that we acquire an application from them for you to consider that would document their expertise, background, analytical abilities. You've all hit the nail on the head. The ZBA is probably the most critical appointment that this board makes. It does have quasi-judicial authority. It does make decisions outside of your frame of reference. It is not appealable by the board. Trustee Pompo is correct. The only appeal process is to the Circuit Court, over which you have absolutely no control, which has been demonstrated several times. But at any event, I think for this particular appointment, you need a candidate. All of the candidates need serious analytical capabilities, business background, business acumen, understanding of ordinances, understanding of laws, regulations, and impacts of decisions. They need strong decision-making processes that you need to be able to track and to document. So I think you need, for this particular position, a in-depth application and a resume from both of them, so you can adequately assess their capabilities.
Thanks for comments. Pete?
If you're not comfortable with it, I can withdraw the motion until the next meeting and then get the information for him and then vote on it at the next meeting. Whatever you're comfortable with. But
I would say, based on what the board has told you, that they don't have a great level of comfort with making a decision right now. I think that would be a reasonable plan of action on your part, Pete. And we can ask them to put the application, the standard application together and resubmit it, and I'll put it on the next agenda. I think that Lynn's point, likes to interview people, and as you talk about the Zoning Board of Appeals, you may want to reach out and talk with Steve Haken and Jim Odavero, Steve Pelto, or Mr. Marks, who are also on the Zoning Board of Appeals, because I don't know how well you've interviewed or talked to them, but I know that any of them would be happy to talk to you about the weight of the decisions that are on their shoulders when something comes before the Zoning Board of Appeals, because it does have, it's a rule of law. They have the ability to change things and change the direction of the township within our zoning. So it is important. But Pete, if you want to,
in the light of that, I'll make I withdraw my motion till next week, or for 2 weeks for our next meeting?
Clerk Rattari?
I'll withdraw mine also.
Somebody make a motion to request the formal applications from both applicants, and I will have it on the next agenda.
I'll make that motion.
No, second.
Dennis, if I may, the flip side of that is, if the planning commission is doing its job, the ZBA shouldn't have to. So fortunately, in the past years, the ZBA hasn't had to.
I think, you know,
Me, I want to give kudos to the past planning commissions. I think they've done a great job.
I agree, Lynn, and I think that part of it was the updates that we had to do to our own zoning, and it made a big difference. I think that was really getting through and updating all of the zoning and ordinances made a big difference. We took a much more reasonable approach, and I think that really limited the amount of folks who had to appeal to the ZBA, but you know, still very important. And you're right, Planning Commission did do a better job, and that has cut down the number of meetings that we had to have. There is a motion and a second on the.
Oh, just a point of clarification. Mainly, the issues that the ZBA would deal with would be applications of ordinances by the zoning administrator as opposed to the planning commission.
Right. We have a motion and a second to send out or request applications, formal applications from the two applicants, and have them submitted before May 20th, which will be our next meeting. All those in favor? Aye. That motion passes. Thank you. And we will have them for the next one. The next item on our agenda is new business. Pam's been waiting very patiently. Thank you, Pam. For the Peter White Public Library Annual Report, and Pam, if you'd approach the podium, that would be great.
Hi, Pam. Pam Christensen from the Peter White Public Library. This is, once again, we're back to the time where we're asking the Township Board to place the contract for library services millage back on the ballot. And so I would take this opportunity just to update you a little bit about users from Marquette Township. Currently, we have 1,843 people registered for library cards. Last year, Marquette Township residents checked out 27,028 items, which is about 15 items per card holder. That's very good. And so far this fiscal year, our fiscal year starts in July. So far this fiscal year, over 18,000 items have been checked out by Marquette Township residents. So we are gearing up for our summer reading club, which will begin in June. We have a new youth services director, youth services librarian, and we're changing the summer reading club somewhat. I think children will enjoy it. Instead of drawings for prizes, if they complete certain goals for the program, they will be able to select their own book that they get to keep. And I think that will do a lot towards enforcing that, you know, children read during the summer. It's been found that children who do keep up with reading during the summer months will maintain their grade level during the summer months. Children who don't do any sort of reading have a tendency to slide several grade levels back. So for the younger children who are developing those reading skills, you know, that can be tremendously disheartening when you get back to school and you're not reading as well as you were. But I think we continue to provide a variety of services to residents of your township, and we're hoping that the board will consider placing the renewal for the contract for library services on the ballot.
Great. Questions for Pam while we have her at the podium from the board? None? Wow, that was easy. Thanks, Pam. So you've heard Pam's request as representative of the Peter White Public Library. You also, she had sent a letter out to us that basically had the same information in it. The Board of Trustees met on March 18th and asked Pam to come to forward the following request to us, which was to place a millage renewal for the contract for library services on the ballot for November, place the millage renewal on the ballot for the current millage of 1 mil, as reduced by the Headley Amendment, which is .9061 mils. State that the millage request is a period of 4 years, 2014 through 2017 inclusive, and complete this action prior to the deadline to file ballot language with the Marquette County Clerk for the November 4th election, which is July 29th, 2014. And you've heard Pam's request and report, and I would ask the board for what's your pleasure.
I'd like to request that we put this on the next, at least the next agenda or the one following, and have a forum discussion on it. Because I don't know that that's something with our financial status that we can just, we didn't allot any time for it, I don't think, unless you were planning on having a lengthy discussion.
We can have the discussion now. I mean, it doesn't matter what you make a motion and we'll act whatever you prefer.
I guess it doesn't matter. I have my thoughts, but I didn't know if anybody was ready to actually discuss.
Do you want to make a motion, or Ernie, do you want to?
I'm not ready to make a motion.
I mean, you can make the motion to put it on the next agenda, or to, to delay it till the next agenda. if
Okay,
you're more
I guess that's what I was thinking, that we'd be able to have a forum discussion on it, so it's a little more open. I was thinking next meeting, but I don't know how full our agenda is next time. Forum discussion is usually 20 minutes or a half hour that we allot, so that's quite a bit of time. So I think this is important to everybody. I think we need to chew on it as a group.
So you want to make a motion?
Yes.
And that motion would
Put
be?
it on the next agenda if it's not so full that we can't accommodate 20 minutes or half an hour. Or otherwise the following one.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to move the request to the next agenda for the Peter White Public Library millage. As a motion maker, any other comments?
No, just that I think that discussion would be a little more relaxed in a forum setting rather than as part of the
As
meeting.
the second, Diana, you want to add anything to your conversation? Board comment. Clerk Rattari.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have some, I think Trustee Pompa will be gone in June, and I think Trustee Trescott might be your second meeting in June. And I'm gonna need time to get this legally reviewed, and so we do have to wrap this up somewhat in short order, because I need time to get it legally reviewed and filed at the clerk's office at the county. So we have to get this wrapped up by at least the first meeting in July. So just so that the board has that time frame, so I can make sure I get everything correct, so I don't have a problem at the last minute. So I like lots of time.
Okay. Dan, comments?
I'm assuming that we'll be, by putting it off to next meeting, we'll be making our decision at the next meeting?
Yeah, we could do something after it comes out of forum discussion, put it on as an agenda item after forum discussion.
Okay.
If that was the case.
That gives you plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Trustee LaRue?
I think if we have any questions, we'll just read them, and if you want to, we can call her up or send it to Randy and get questions answered.
I'm sure, Pam, you'd be able to attend if they want us. Would you be able to attend? Would be the May 20th meeting for a forum discussion?
Yeah, our board meets that same night, but we meet at 5, and
Oh.
our board meetings are generally done by 7.
Okay.
I might just be a couple minutes late.
And then we would hold the forum discussion until you were here. Okay, does that answer, Pete?
Yes, thank you. I'm always going back to, and everyone looks at me when I start talking about money, looking at our future financial status, because we really don't know what it is with the tax tribunal bet. We have to come up with some decision as to which way we're going as a board in the future. If we're going to move forward with additional legal or accept what's been set. And if it is, we have to know what kind of money we're going to have, not only this year, but into the future. So no matter what it is we come up with, we have to make sure we have enough money to operate as we move forward on everything that we got planned, everything that's in the budget and that, because we may end up having to cut back on things on the budgetary items that we've got. Because if we lose that case or we don't move forward on it, what is it gonna cost the township in that? In the next 5 to 10 years in that? We don't really know. And so I'm getting real concerned when they're looking at, right now, we have 9.16 mills out there. And we can't go any higher than 10. We're not like the city, can go up to 17, 18, 19 mills. We're at the limit at this point in time. And it all depends on what we as a board decide to do financially in that, how we're gonna handle everything. Because right now, if you go back to our survey with the people, they want roads. And if you go back to reading the minutes of the road committee, and there's a comment from the road commission, is that they don't have money for maintenance of roads and that. So what's gonna happen? Turn it to gravel, or either turn it to gravel or we have to do it ourselves in that. If we do it ourselves, it's gonna be very expensive. So we have to start looking at where we're gonna put the money, and it's gonna not be an easy decision, people. Because we don't know what the future's gonna bring in the next 3 to 4 or 5 months in that, because that's gonna set the stage for the next 10 years for the township and that. So we just don't have any idea in that. So that's my comments at this point in time. Whatever we do, it's, the bottom line is money at this point in time.
Any other board member comment? Dan?
Well, just a real quick follow-up on that, and I understand where he's coming from on this thing too, but also ultimately it's a decision by the residents of the township to decide, so it's, you know, we can only present our case, and if we feel that this is gonna run into money, but like I said, ultimately it's the residents' decision, so I think the residents need to weigh in on this one way or another also. I would hope we would get more input from more residents one way or another on this, before we have our next meeting, but I think Henry's right. We could be facing a financial problem big time, but you know, like I said, we can present our case as to whatever it is, and let the township residents decide, I think.
Thanks, Dan. I would be remiss if I didn't point out, I did put it in everybody. I just wanted Mr. Payant to know, David Payant, 2132 Montgomery Street, did send a letter in support of the Peter White Public Library proposed millage, and requested that the board would support a millage request of 4 years to help the library in planning and administering future programs. The board did get a copy of the letter when it was received, was put in everyone's mailbox. I wanted to make sure that Mr. Payant knew that his voice had been heard and it was delivered to the board. That having been said, with the motion before us to delay it for 2 weeks and put it on a forum discussion, you know, if that's the board's pleasure and the motion prevails, that's fine. I could make a decision this evening. To me, the Peter White Public Library, you know, we're doing it every 2 years at this point. It's overwhelming support. There's over 70% of residents, no matter when we put it on the ballot, support Peter White Public Library and the continued funding of it. I don't believe that that will change anytime soon. I think that we'll do it a forum discussion. We'll spend a half an hour talking about it. I think Peter White Public Library millage will be on the ballot in November, and 70+ % of residents will support it again for whatever the board decides the number of the terms that it will be on the ballot for. That's why I say I could make a decision tonight. I'm not sure, you know, I don't think anything different comes into the conversation every 2 years when we have the conversation, other than we have folks come out and support Peter White Public Library in a big way. Overwhelming support. I think that the voters speak every time they go to the ballots when it's on, and could that change if we were in dire financial straits and we really had to start putting the squeeze on folks? They still will make up their decision. If we have two things on the ballot that says, you know, here's a mill for road funding and a mill for Peter White Public Library, folks will vote either, well, yes, I'll say yes to the library but no to the roads, or vice versa, or they'll say yes to both. But putting it as a millage question really allows folks to weigh in, And I think, Ernie, you're right in that, limited funds, everybody operates with limited funds, and at some point will they make decisions that, gosh, I'm not going to support the library anymore, and because I have a shrinking budget, I've got a lot of economic pressures on me. Perhaps that day will come. I don't believe that it's here right now, and I think that ultimately this board will move to support Peter White Public Library on the ballot, like I said, in November, and that the voters will come in and have their say, and 75% of them will vote to approve it, no matter what millage questions are in front of them at that time. Manager Gerard?
Just a quick clarification. I don't want the residents out there to think that the township's crying woe here because of the tax rate bill decisions. It's all of us, including the library. The simple fact of the matter is the millage pool will be significantly less if the Court of Appeals decision stands. The entire county, all of the tax-paying entities that we distribute to, stand to lose $1.7 million this year, which means it has to come out of their fund balances for refunds to the affected businesses.
Thanks, Randy. So, that having been said, we have a motion and a second to move the discussion of Peter White Public Library millage to the meeting of May 20th in the first forum discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes, and Pam, thanks for agreeing to come here. I'll send a follow-up an email just as a reminder so that you'll see the agenda and know when it's on. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a Public Works construction update, which will be delivered by Township Manager Gerard.
Very, very brief, about 2 weeks out from occupying the new building. Almost everything is completed. We've done the preliminary walkthroughs, had a meeting this afternoon. Very, very few items are outstanding, as yet to be done. We anticipate that by the end of this week, we'll be starting to move equipment and furnishings into the building from the old facilities and from storage. And within about 2 weeks, we'll be fully in the building. Obviously, because of what's going on outside with the weather, we're going to be a little bit delayed in some of the things like the final exterior parking lot finishing and things such as that, some of the grading. Hard to believe, but the ground is still frozen, and so it's difficult to work with until it thaws out a little bit in the surrounding areas. But interior will be completed, exterior of the building will be completed. The landscaping and some of the grounds work with the paving and things such as that are dependent upon the lifting of weight restrictions from the roads.
Questions for Manager Gerard? Seeing none. I did tour those facilities late last week. And with Superintendent Page and Manager Gerard, I have to say that you'll be impressed if you haven't been in there in a while, and when you get the opportunity to look and see what Hall Contracting has turned that facility into. You'll have a hard time remembering as our old fire hall. But what I think is really cool is when you get into that vehicle bay where the fire trucks used to be stored. You look at the expansion there and how with the doors are going to be able to drive in from the back, have all the equipment staged and ready to go. I mean, one of the challenges that our Public Works has dealt with, especially this year with this kind of weather, where we have equipment stored in various garages all over the township, and when they need to mobilize to go to a frozen water main or a sewer main, somebody takes a truck and heads over to one place to pick one piece of equipment up, and somebody heads in a different direction, and then they all have to meet where the issue is. And I think it's going to be making us so much more responsive, just more professional, to have everything housed under one roof where people can, our guys need to be mobilized. They're going to, pull up, walk in, jump into their vehicles, hook up to whatever they need from a trailer standpoint or equipment standpoint, and roll to the problem area. So the whole thing, I think, will just make us more prepared, better prepared, especially when you have winter weather like we had. And I would encourage you, I mean, I know we're getting up here within a couple of weeks, but if you would like to take a tour of the facility, I think that Manager Gerard, Superintendent Page or myself, if I can be available, would be happy to bring anyone in and walk you through where they're at. We can most likely avoid any issues where we're walking in a beehive of activity, although it was pretty busy the day when I was in there last week. A lot of, ceiling tiles were going in, but the tiles down on the floor, the paint's primarily done, and wires are pulled, cables are there. It's going to be a great facility and a great reuse of that building. I don't know what we would have done if we did not turn it into a Public Works facility. I think we would have had a hard time marketing it to anybody else in the middle of a residential area. I think the folks who will have to we'll do a public open house and allow folks the opportunity to see it as well, so that they can see where their dollars were spent and how much better it prepares us. The next item on our agenda is 10C, consider the appeal of the tax tribunal decision. As most of you are aware, we received our Court of Appeals opinion. They rejected our case. We were definitely surprised and dismayed. Legal counsel has written, an opinion piece that's been shared with the board members for our consideration to whether or not we want to pursue it moving forward, and ask the Supreme Court to take a look at it. We also know that the Supreme Court takes up a very small percentage of cases, and usually something that would have statewide significance. We believe that this is one that could have statewide significance. I've really struggled with this, just when the idea that not only does it have just a tremendous impact on Marquette Township and Marquette County specifically's operations, but it has statewide implications. It's not just us. It's not just Brighting Township or Marquette Township. In fact, I think that the Court of Appeals opinion in many ways is worse than the Michigan Tax Tribunal's judgment, in that the Michigan Tax Tribunal was focused on property tax assessment of big box stores, and the Court of Appeals opinion opens that up and doesn't specifically discuss big box stores. It opens it up on a wider basis, which makes challenges much more likely to the taxation across the community, and again, not just Marquette Township. I think when we first started banging this drum some 2.5 years ago, trying to get people to understand what was happening, and we just couldn't get any traction with it. Everybody thought it was just our case against Lowe's, and slowly but surely, as more people realize what we were talking about and you start realizing the impact to dollars, I think that they're finally beginning to understand that this has huge implications statewide. And I know that I have had Dulcie prepare just a most recent update of where we will go if all of the cases across are projected. And I didn't have time to make copies of this for the board beforehand. I will have them in your mailbox, and I'll send it out electronically as well. But the potential lost revenues on big box retail across all jurisdictions, and this goes back to 2011 with the amounts of dollars, like Randy had mentioned, that we are going to have to take out of current budgets and refund back to these stores. $1.7 million, $703,000 for 2013 and 2014 alone, has a tremendous impact. We're talking township operating of $198,000 plus an additional $101,000 to fire, $34,000 from roads, $36,000 from library from 2011 to 2014. So, as we sit here and talk about Peter White Public Library and the implications this has, I think people are finally waking up to realize that it has an impact much greater than just our operating or our fire department operating. For us to have to, if all of the appeals go the way they're going, and we have to look at, Peter White Public Library and say, well, you're going to have to refund $36,658 out of your budget because of the Court of Appeals opinion and the Michigan Tax Tribunal opinion. That's a huge impact for someone like Pam to suddenly have to wake up and deal with. If you look at school operating, we're talking about $728,000 refund back from 2011 through 2014. State education tax, $242,710. I know that in my conversations with some of the local school officials, they think that Lansing just makes it up. They say, well, Lansing will just make up whatever we lose from this. You have to understand that this is statewide. This is, the money's not flowing into the coffers. They've made a decision that says these stores can be valued as if they're vacant and dark stores. Well, from an assessing standpoint, what's our formula then? We still have to go through the manuals and put a value on those buildings. You build a $10 million store, we look at the manuals, and the manuals come back and they say, hey, the store is worth $10 million. We're still required to use the manuals. They'll immediately appeal to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. The Tax Tribunal will throw out our valuation and tell us that, no, these comparables are right, and you have to value it as if it's a vacant store. Great, we just opened up a $10 million store that's worth $3.8 million. It goes against everything that you've ever heard. As a resident, should I challenge? Because I don't know, maybe my neighborhood will be blighted in some distant future down the road. Is my home really worth that much? Or should I appeal to the local township here and go in and say, I don't want to pay that many taxes. I think I should only pay a third of what my home is worth because, I was born in Flint, and my sister still lives and sells real estate down there. And I can assure you, Flint was a boom town back when I was a kid. Flint was rocking. Everybody had pockets full of money and worked for General Motors and retired 30 and out and had toys and camps and new cars and houses. Those same houses now sell for about, $1,000 in Flint. What's to say my neighborhood in Marquette Township won't be like that in some future unknown? And that's what the tax tribunals asked us to do, and the Court of Appeals has supported that. And I know I'm passionate about it, and I tend to ramble on, but it's such an attack on our revenue stream. I'm all about being business friendly in the state of Michigan. I understand where the governor goes with this, but we can't be business friendly to the point where you pull the revenue out of Iron Ore Heritage Trail, Peter White Public Library, fire services, school operating debt, county operations, transit, special programs. All of those people are impacted by these decisions, and it's an incredible amount of money. I mean, school operating, $290,000 a year just out of the stores out of Marquette Township. That's crazy to me. I just can't believe it happened. And we need a legislative solution. The ones that were introduced last year got tied up in a committee and never came out. I have opinions as to why it didn't come out of committee, and I'd be happy to share them with you. But I think we have to do something, and the frustration here is incredible. Council Zappa is here this evening and can share some information with us on this, as well as we've had some conversations with Marquette County in a way to look at where we're at. For us to pursue it, we know that Brighting Township's board has already approved with our current legal team that we're sharing with moving forward with a potential Supreme Court case. Tonight we're here to ask if we want to do the same thing, and if it makes sense to spend more money. Is it throwing good money after bad at this point? The initial estimates are somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000 for us to continue the appeal. If we split it with Brighting, it's down to, maybe $25,000 for us to spend to continue the appeal. Well, we stand to lose $79,000 a year just in general fund operations. So do we agree to spend $25,000, or do we say we want to pursue it and we ask the county to throw in more money? They did give us $12,000 towards it, but our price tag was $250,000 to get to this process so far. Without a legislative solution, these will always be one-offs. We'll be challenged over and over and over again. I urge every resident to contact your legislators, Senator Casperson and John Keevala, and let them know that you're very frustrated with the direction that the state of Michigan is going with this, and beseech them to come up with a legislative solution to stop this. I mean, because, like I said, the Court of Appeals opinion may have done more damage. It could open it up for, is it going to go down to every fast food restaurant every mom and pop convenience store. Can you make the case for residential? Perhaps, if you've got the time and the attorney. I don't know what'll happen to the state of Michigan, and unless we really let our legislators know that we're not going to stand for it, nothing will be done. And I'll get off my soapbox and, open it up for the board to discuss what's the board's pleasure on where we want to move with this.
Question?
Lynn?
I'd like to clarify this just a little bit more from a business owner's standpoint so that the public can relate, because it may hit your mortgage, your value of your home, and your taxes. If I'm paying $100 a square foot for my property taxes, I'm just throwing this out. The big box stores are saying they're paying $100 a square foot. They want to pay $25. Okay? So on my tax bill, I'm paying for the road millage and the heritage trail and the library and the police and I can't even remember. Go home and look at your tax bills. All of those people are being paid by all of the taxes that are collected. Okay? We're taking $100 of my square foot and I'm putting that toward all of those entities on your tax bill. All right, cut that by 3/4 right now. Sure, I'm paying 3/4 less in my taxes, but the Heritage Trail is getting 3/4 less. And I believe Randy gave me the number of $8,000. I called Carol today. I said, you're going to lose $8,000. You've got to give it back, because we have to give it to Lowe's and Menards and Best Buy and whoever else gets involved with this. If their property is valued at $10 million and their taxes are $3 million, what impact is that going to have on the state? They're not collecting that many taxes from the businesses, but everything they fund, the fire department, the sheriff's department, the senior center, is not going to get that money. We're talking $1.7 million, folks, that this county is not going to have. You're not going to have it. And it's scary to think that this can trickle down to what I understand from a radio conversation this weekend. Compare your $250,000 house. There's a meth lab next door that just shot down the value of your house. It's the same thing. This is not just about big box stores. This affects the tax base of this state. And I can't believe, as a business owner, that anybody in the legislature is supporting this. I can't believe that my hotel has the value of some closed property on the way to St. Ignace that's boarded up. And that's what they're saying. I want to sell my hotel someday and retire. What's it going to be worth? If the taxable assessed value is 3/4 less, I'm not going to get anything. You're not going to get anything for your home. No way. This is serious stuff. And everybody thinks it's just Marquette Township, and it isn't. We're the taxing authority. So when we start refunding that money back, it's going to come out of your pockets. This is very serious. You need to call everybody you can think of in Lansing and tell them that they got to stop doing this. It's not going to affect us as much as it is the whole county, Marquette Township, because we don't have that much millage involved. But I hope you can understand the impact that this is going to have statewide when they're trying to rebuild the state. And they're saying that this money doesn't have to come back. It's just, that's my soapbox. Because I have 2 people that called me that didn't understand this. So I said, please listen to this broadcast tonight so you can understand. And I know Randy's got tons of figures that he can hand out because he gave them to me today. This is scary, folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Pete?
The importance of this issue is, I was listening to the City of Marquette meeting. 2 of their commissioners made a statement that they should, it's so important that the city should contribute to our fund to fight this thing. I was talking to Randy, was it last week or something like that, and he brought up something that I never thought about, insurance. Okay, what about that? How are they going to pay insurance if it's worth 75% less? They're going to take say that burns down, what are they gonna pay it with? Because they're not gonna, what about your banking, if you're gonna secure a banking loan? You know, where are they coming from there? It's so important that we all stick together and, like, instead of call and find, you know, give our leaders down there tell them we really have to get on this thing, and maybe they can do something about it. I know they're working on it, but it's very, very important. It's not just right in Marquette Township. So.
Thanks, Pete. Dan?
Well, I'm not going to jump on a soapbox because obviously everybody has pretty much. So I just have a few questions. We all know that legislatures takes forever and a day to go through, and I guess a few questions I have, and I'm sure Randy or Mr. Zappa can answer them for me. How much is the township itself, not the total entity, but the township itself, had to pay back to Lowe's?
Well, in our very first go-round, for the years prior to 2011, I think it was, our portion was $34,000, just our portion.
Mhm.
Just for that one store, in the initial go-round for the years prior to 2011.
And then after that, we've
been a hold, basically, 11, 12, 13 for Lowe's in our case, and Home Depot in the Brighton Township's case have been held. Basically, they've been frozen pending the appeal. Now, the appeal just went against, so now 11, 12, 13 have to be refunded, as well as 14, what's collected in 14.
Right, and that was one of my next questions. We have pending cases out there. I'm assuming 13, I think I heard. at
13
least.
was the last count, and I know there are more coming in now. The Court of Appeals opinion was an unpublished opinion, which means it's not precedential, but it's not widely circulated. People are starting to hear about it, and I can assure you that the attorneys on the other side are making sure people are hearing about it, because that gets them more business, basically, to take these cases to the tax tribunal.
So now that the Court of Appeals has gone against us, that opens it up for those people to now file their appeals.
Well, in the interim, we had negotiated with the ones that were pending a high-low type of a settlement. So we've somewhat buttressed some of the losses, but these are the actual current figures that have been calculated based upon those. Now, this assumes a proportional loss.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, Lowe's was at, I believe, $66 or $67 a square foot, and Supervisor Lehman can correct me, he's actually the assessor for the township by statute, but they reduced that to $25 a square foot. So that's the proportional ratio that we've applied to all of the others that are pending and those that we expect to come in to come up with these estimated figures of what the cost is going to be across the county.
So the cost to the township then is the $333,945 for the pending ones, plus I know you had that in your manager's report, and I'm just assuming.
Yeah, well, actually, with the refunds, calculating what the refunds would be for 2011, 12, 13, and then for 14, so far out of my general fund, $198,444. The original figure that I gave you was prior to these calculations being done. That was based upon only those that we had in hand at that time.
Mm-hmm. And then the $101,000 from the fire is going to have to also come out.
Correct.
Correct.
And when will we be able to find out actually when the Supreme Court would actually, if and when the Supreme Court would actually hear this case?
Well, actually,
I'm sure that's a slow process also. I don't think that's going to be something.
Well,
I'm sure their docket isn't like, well, okay, we can open it tomorrow.
And they may not even accept it. Basically, the process, and Attorney Zappa can certainly speak to this better than me, but the process basically is first you have to apply for leave to appeal, and that takes a brief to go in, and then that's evaluated, and then if that's accepted, if the court accepts your case, then you have to start the briefing process for the actual presentation. It's not like the Court of Appeals, it's an actual court case.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking, we could go into years on this one before it's even heard.
It could be.
So in the meantime, during all that time, we're refunding money continually, and
correct.
And
stipulated, Dan, to a lot of the appeals as they came in. Once we decided to take it to the Court of Appeals, as everybody else was starting to come in and file with us with the Michigan Tax Tribunal, to keep the amount of expenditures down rather than have to go and get appraisals and defend ourselves in the tax tribunal and have these cases going through one after another and litigate each one. We stipulated with many of them as they came forward and just said, if we prevail, would you agree to this moving forward? And here's your last three tax years, and if we lose, would you stipulate to this amount? So it did help us save money rather than litigate every one of them all the way through. But now that we've lost, now it's time for us to
Do good- make good
move
on-
forward and make good on it. So, will that be delayed if we go to the, if we make request for leave with the Supreme Court? We can certainly make the case that, hey, give us, based on that while we're waiting to hear, and delay it potentially. But if they move forward, we've stipulated, and we start the refund process now.
So, so then we don't have to reassess all these ones that have filed, but if any new ones come in, we're gonna have to reassess,
Well,
which is gonna cost us also money, obviously.
It's interesting because as we move forward with some of these, you're going to see a bunch of people who are going to be represented by not only just Attorney Shapiro, who started this bandwagon, but you're going to see a lot of other attorneys
Right.
come out and move some cases forward. We have to, as a board, decide what we want to do moving forward. What's the direction we want to give the assessing department? Are we willing to get appraisals and defend ourselves in the tax tribunal knowing what we know, which could easily be $30,000 every time we need to go to the tax tribunal for each one of these cases? And again, even though all of the money gets shared amongst all the entities we talked about, the price tag stays with us, so do we, as a board, think that that's a good spend of money, or do we say we just have to stipulate and figure out, get the best deal we can possibly make? And that's a decision that the board has to make moving forward.
Well, I guess my final comment then is, I'd like to see some kind of a plan as to how we're going to make up this difference, I guess. Since obviously we're going to be doing budget amendments like crazy on this one, so I'd like to see some kind of a plan as to how we plan on covering our losses.
We definitely have some planning sessions
Yeah.
ahead of us to come up with some recommendations on what we'll do. And again, when you look at the county, everybody's going to have the same thing, right down to, like I said, Peter White Public Library suddenly says, I have to give up $36,000 of revenue from the last 4 years, and it really impacts everybody's budget and makes us really start to say, well, okay, what do we cut and how do we refund it? As we tried to fund for, emergencies, we have 3 months, 4 months money put in there. Those can get wiped out in a lot of cases, and we have to start that process all over again. It changes our revenue stream.
Right, so it's gonna affect obviously our budget that we're into now, as well as our upcoming budgets, which probably is only gonna make it even more important that we start our budget process earlier to try to accommodate this. That's all I have to say.
Thanks. Randy?
Well, just as a for instance, right now, we're just starting our 2015 budget process, and I'm estimating at the moment right now about $80,000 less revenue for 2015, just right off the bat, as a result of the ones we have in hand currently. And it's interesting because many of the people that I've spoken with, and Trustee Durant and I talked about this earlier today, many of the people that I talk with still don't understand. I'm having people say, it's no big deal, you've got all that business out there, you're raking in all that money. It doesn't stay with us. We have a very, very small portion of that revenue that stays with us. 4.9 mils out of your tax bill. Look at your tax bill, what the total mills are. 4.9 are ours. And the fire department has 2.5 that was extra voted. The point of the matter is that with these kinds of dollars, if I have to take $198,000 in excess of $198,000 out of my general fund balance, I don't have a fund balance anymore in the general fund. That means services to businesses are going to be impacted. We may not be providing sheriff support anymore. That's direct to the business community. They take 90% of that. The bigger issue for the residents to be concerned about is we have sized and installed our infrastructure, water and wastewater, to service the business community. If they're not paying for it, it's still there. It serves you. It's going to come down to the residents paying that cost somehow, whether it's in rates or whether it's in additional millage or whatever, or our inability to serve some areas. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things we're talking about, looking long-term.
Roger, would you mind coming up to the podium and just answering a few questions for the board? Thank you. First and foremost, can you just comment about the Supreme Court process so that the board has a better understanding of how we'd move forward?
I can, and I'd also like to remind the board that I'm not second guessing in any of the comments that I give the attorney that you've hired to handle the tax tribunal matters. This is a highly specialized area of the law, and that's why the board selected someone from Lansing who specializes in that field. But when the public and the community and the board hears the types of figures that are involved in this legal proceeding, understand also that that attorney, because of his specialty and expertise, is charging about 3 times the hourly rate of your township attorney. So that's not money that's staying local either. But the Supreme Court process is unlike the Court of Appeals, where there's an appeal of right, which means if you don't like the result that the tax tribunal issued, you have an automatic right to file an appeal with the Court of Appeals, to file briefs, and to present arguments. That appeal is based on the record of evidence that was presented during the 2 to 3 day trial that was conducted at the tax tribunal in Lansing. The Supreme Court has an application process, which essentially is a provision whereby the township or the non-prevailing party asks permission to appeal to the Supreme Court. You don't have an appeal of right. The percentage of cases that the Michigan Supreme Court accepts of those cases that are that an application is filed is relatively low, and it's somewhat meaningless to give statistics because it varies significantly depending upon the type of case. But the mere fact that an application is filed does not mean the Supreme Court hears the case. If the court grants the application for leave to appeal, that then means that it feels it's an interesting enough issue that affects a broad enough perspective, or that they've looked at the initial briefs and feel that there's an error in the principles, the legal principles applied. Then another brief must be filed by the parties and oral arguments are heard. This appeal to the Supreme Court, however, is still based solely on the evidence that was in the record from the trial conducted at the tax tribunal. It is not a new trial. It is not a new opportunity to present different appraisals or different evidence. So part of the analysis that needs to be made is whether or not it makes fiscal sense to appeal this particular case, to ask permission to appeal this particular case, or to evaluate what we've learned in the process of what the tax tribunal has found to be, in their minds, important for the analysis of how to appraise and evaluate a store, a big box store. So another option is to take a look at the pending cases we have on appeal that have been filed with the tax tribunal, and there are about a dozen of them, and determine whether there might be a different one that is worth taking to the tax tribunal. There's some very significant expense involved in that as well. We've just had a meeting, without going into tremendous detail, to look to possibly collaborate with other recipients of taxing funds to determine whether they might be willing to contribute or participate in this, because as has been emphasized repeatedly this evening and at past meetings, this is a huge issue, not just for Marquette Township, but for all of the townships and municipal entities throughout the state of Michigan. There is some interest in at least one other taxing jurisdiction in Marquette County participating or assisting in the expenses. and in weighing and evaluating what the best route is. We do not necessarily have to make a decision at this meeting tonight to either move forward with the Supreme Court appeal or to focus on another pending tax tribunal appeal. One of the benefits of going with another appeal would be that gives us the opportunity to utilize what has been learned in the existing cases and perhaps hire not only an appraisal expert, as was done in this case, but an economic development type of expert who would provide testimony and evidence as to exactly what the market structure is in Marquette Township. Because quite frankly, the tax tribunal is completely clueless as to where Marquette Township is, much less what their business climate is, or what the occupancy rate is, or what the traffic count is, or a whole host of other factors that affect what the value of the property is, or at least should be, in Marquette Township. So to get that into evidence, one option, and I'm not suggesting that this is the way we should be going either, but it's something that this board needs to consider, is whether or not to hire an expert economic analyst who can compare, for example, the Marquette Township economic climate with, let's say, Flint, which was spoken of here, or Saginaw, or other suburbs in southeastern Michigan that we have been compared with and lumped into the same category or put into the same pigeonhole as if we have a series of dark stores. Where this ruling is coming from to some degree is the fact that if you drive in many of these municipalities in southeastern Michigan, you've got a dark big box store on every corner. And does that structure have a different value? Well, probably yes, but that's because from a tax standpoint, there's a term called the highest and best use. And as the assessor is required to figure out what that highest and best use is. With whether it's Lowe's or any other big box store, the highest and best use is typically going to be the use that that business is being, or that structure is being put to right then and there as an occupied business. It doesn't matter what the identity of that business is, but what's happening in the southeastern Michigan climate is that while the highest and best use, because of the changing economy, no longer is a hardware store or a department store or a supermarket, a grocery store. But now it's becoming, because there are a glut of huge empty buildings, maybe their highest and best use has become a roller rink or a religious institution, or has to be remodeled into a whole series of small businesses. That's where the inequities of the arguments come. But as of right now, as of yesterday, we have one of the other taxing jurisdictions who has an attorney on there that they've utilized for other taxing issues, wants to examine what was placed in the record at the tax tribunal level. That involves seeing documents they haven't seen until late yesterday that were forwarded to them. This particular attorney, again, is not going to necessarily be second-guessing the opinions and the advice that's been offered by the attorney that represented Marquette Township from Lansing, but to offer perhaps a second point of view on this is something that has a reasonable likelihood of success at the Supreme Court level, or perhaps the money would be better spent by devoting those resources in a different fashion by pursuing a different case. I've consulted, as has the manager in a joint meeting, with this person just late yesterday. He's in the process of reviewing this. I guess it would be my recommendation that we bump this over until the May 20 meeting, the next meeting, because we do not have a lot of time, and your attorney in Lansing is going to need to know ASAP whether they're proceeding or not proceeding with an application for leave to appeal, because that's not a process that can happen overnight in putting the paperwork together. But by the same token, there's enough time there, I think, to allow this other attorney some time to look at it and give us some more input and advice, and have a joint meeting between now and then, and to make a more educated guess, because it is such a critical issue to Marquette Township, to the taxing jurisdictions, and the state as a whole, that I think we don't want to make a hasty decision, but we want to make as educated of a determination as we possibly can, with as much information as we can. One other question that I think I didn't address, that Trustee Pompo had questioned, is how long will this take if the Supreme Court does grant the application for leave to appeal? On a case of this nature, it would probably be more than a year, but not much. And that's just a ballpark guess. Things in the Supreme Court, other cases that I've had in the Supreme Court, generally a year to a year and a half from start to finish. And that's been actually getting shorter in recent years, partly because they are doing less work and deciding less cases. But the plus side of that is that it's allowing them to get decisions out. Well, first of all, to get arguments heard more quickly, and to get decisions made more quickly as well. So they are processing these a little bit more quickly. This should not be a situation where we're dealing with a 2, 3, 5-year scenario by any means. It still comes back, however, to whether a legislative remedy is the ultimate solution to all of this. And one of the comments that has been made is we've got to get something that is a well-drafted, suitable legislative bill that can garner support across party lines, and that's in the process, as I understand it, of happening. But we maybe don't have the perfect bill in place yet, either.
I agree.
But any other questions, I can, again, with the caveat that I'm not here to be critical or to second guess your attorney in this matter, but by the same token, as your local township attorney, I guess I've got some responsibility to make sure that any decision that is made is done with as much information as we possibly can, and I welcome any further questions that you might have.
I think it's important just for the board to note that you heard Roger's recommendation that while time is of the essence in the appeal to the Supreme Court, we do have time based upon, it's a June date that we would have to make that decision by. So we would still be within our time frame of May 20th meeting to be able to send the information down no matter which direction the board decided to move in. That there still is time for that appeal.
One more thing I would like to add of why this is fairly important is because the taxing jurisdiction at this point that is at least evaluating its own budget and trying to determine what resources it might have to be able to devote to assisting the township if it does pursue further remedies, is whether or not they want to assist on a Supreme Court application versus a whole new type of process where we might approach it from a different angle than has been approached so far to date. And at this point, they are relying quite substantially on this individual that I've spoken to and of, and he has a great deal of tax tribunal experience. So in making their decision on how much or whether they're in a position to assist the township on, in whichever solution we pursue, that's going to play a role in the overall decision-making process. It doesn't necessarily drive what we do, but it's just another element of information that should go into the whole formula of deciding what's the best procedure to represent our constituents.
The board should also be aware of the fact that I have had conversations, several now, with the attorney of record that brought us to the Michigan Tax Tribunal and Court of Appeals on the Lowe's case. You heard Roger's cautionary words of wisdom in regards to making a decision right now, and there is another attorney that the other tax entity has had conversations with that is reviewing the information. We have forwarded all the pertinent information down to them for review. Based upon that review, they may not agree that moving forward with another challenge to the Michigan Tax Tribunal is in our best interest, or they may. But you should know that our attorney, Bill Fahey, from Fahey Schultz, does not find any value and thinks it is a bad direction for the township to move in, and I want the board to be aware of that also. But we can also have a meeting with Bill Fahey, a phone conference with the board and Bill at that May 20th meeting to discuss anything that we have heard from the other entity before the board makes their decision. Randy?
Just one additional comment and a request. Comment is, I agree with Roger and with Supervisor Leamington and the others that have said what we really need here is a legislative solution going forward. However, I also know that legislative decisions and solutions out of Lansing involve money, and I can assure you, at least I'm assured, that any legislative solution will result in reduced taxes of some sort. So we will have less income coming in, even with a legislative solution, I'm convinced. Second request is that because time is very short here, we have a June 3rd deadline to be filing with the Supreme Court if we wish to do that. The estimate is it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to put the paperwork together to do that. I don't think we can wait until the May 20th meeting to start that process, and I would request that you give me authorization to have Bill Fahey start putting the paperwork together as a precaution in case the decision is made to go forward, so we're ready and we're not behind the curve, last minute, trying to put together a document for the Supreme Court.
Thanks, Randy.
And
So-
if anybody asks, that is a reasonable request. That's not an exaggerated timeline by any means. The time estimate that's being provided is fairly standard, and that's a reasonable request.
Thanks, Roger. Lynn?
When you're talking about this other taxing authority, not only for me but for the public, are you talking about a municipality?
A municipal entity, yes.
Okay, so some other entity like Marquette Township is considering partnering with us and either giving us money or being on the...
Correct.
Okay. So do you see, in your experience, going as another appeal and taking a different store, Home Depot, because I say that because we don't have one, and picking them out of our pocket, I would think that would be a weaker way to go, unless it had some astounding information that wasn't brought out at the original appeal, because I would think the Supreme Court would have more of an interest in reviewing an appeal that's already happened. You know what I mean?
We wouldn't be going to the Supreme Court. We would be going to the tax tribunal if we started with a
new
different
one,
store.
right.
Starting the
And that would
process
then
over
give
from
us
scratch.
the opportunity to present some different arguments that have not been made in this case or any case, because quite frankly, I have read probably several dozen cases out of the tax tribunal in the last 3 years, and the arguments that were made in the Lowe's decision, in the Lowe's case, were fairly similar to what were made in these other cases as well. Mm-hmm. And there's some school of thought that perhaps it could be approached from a different angle by raising some arguments that weren't fully explored because there wasn't a reason to, because the decisions coming from the tax tribunal have been evolving, if you will. So it would be starting over from a different angle, keeping in mind that we can't make new arguments to the Supreme Court because we're restricted to what's already been made.
Okay.
That's
what
the
didn't make
rationale behind it, is it better to move forward with, for example, a different type of argument with respect to highest and best use, and that's why this other attorney is taking a look at just what is in the record already in our case to determine what can be raised exactly in the way of arguments with the Supreme Court without getting ourselves into trouble and the Supreme Court saying, oh, that wasn't raised below, so you can't address that. Because you're not restricted to the same legal arguments, but you're restricted to whatever facts and evidence was produced below. And if there's some merit to introducing a different type of facts or evidence, such as the economic analyst expert that I was talking about earlier, then that would be the way to lean. And I'm not prepared to make a recommendation that is or isn't the way to lean. Now, one other possibility that could develop is there are a couple of other cases, at least 3 other cases, more in southwestern Michigan, in the Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo area, that are currently pending. And between now and the next meeting, we hope to get some more information on those cases to see what type of evidence is being processed in those cases, and seeing whether or not another option might be to just wait to see what develops in those cases at perhaps little or no expense to us, because if it looks like they might have a favorable outcome and the issues are close enough to what our issues are, they could be some type of a precedent that we could use and argue in our favor on all of the other ones we have pending.
So if our process, though, has already been, we'll use Lowe's because they were the first one. Lowe's comes to us, says we're going to the tax tribunal, we have to do an appraisal, they have to do an appraisal. This is where a lot of our legal fees got eaten up in the beginning, okay? So then we go to the tax tribunal, which is a board of 3, I believe, and they're not necessarily assessors or public servants, or they're just anybody, and they decide that this is what they're going to do, and they do it, and now we've got more legal fees. We rang up a couple $100,000 in the beginning. Why would we want to do that again unless this other information is just overwhelming? Because it's costing us the appraisal besides.
It's costing you your appraisal, but if you look at the billings and when they were incurred, the vast majority of your billings were not in the appraisal phase, and they were not in the initial phase of the tax tribunal appeal. They were all, the vast majority was in the end stage for trial preparation and actually conducting the trial and having to pay for your appraiser to go to Lansing to testify live for 2 to 2.5 days. That is where the huge legal fees mount. The getting the case ready, I don't mean to diminish that, because it is an expense. The appraisal itself is can be usually not less than $10,000 for the appraisal for a commercial entity. And the reason that's expensive is because you can't just find comparable sales just anywhere in the Upper Peninsula. That's why we get into this issue of having to find comparable sales in Wisconsin, in Indiana, in Illinois. So that's a huge job for the appraiser. But that's where your expenses mount up, is when you get to the 11th hour and actually go to trial. The processing and getting that case ready is not where the expense lies. Now, yes, there still is going to be a very large expense if you have to proceed to trial on a new case, and that expense is going to be more than the expense of going to the Supreme Court with an application for leave to appeal. No question about it. However, that's why we're going to be evaluating very closely and scrutinizing between now and then exactly what is in the record to be argued that's new or different, but still permissible based on what's in the record if we go to the Supreme Court. And this particular individual that's looking it over has some intimate connections with the tax tribunal just in former employment. So he's got some fairly well-respected opinions, and that could be of some guidance or assistance in helping us make that decision on, is this money well spent to move forward to the Supreme Court? And that might very well be what the conclusion is. Or to not spend that money and to devote our attention on a different case, or to maybe a different case in Marquette Township, or thirdly, to maybe stand on the sidelines and watch this other case from the Grand Rapids area and see how that progresses. So we've got at least 3 options, and I would wholeheartedly support the recommendation that Mr. Fahey, your attorney that conducted the trial, be invited to render his comments and advice at the next meeting.
And then we still have to pay out these refunds in the meantime, but while all of this is going on.
Potentially as they come due, and it's, you know, we'll get ordered because of the Court of Appeals opinion for Lowe's, and we'll definitely have to pay back Lowe's. The other ones that we stipulated to, we did stipulate that while we're waiting for a legal remedy, and so that could apply if we continue to pursue it, that it would be held in abeyance until we get the appeal of the Supreme Court.
So they're not waiting for this decision that just happened. We can still, I mean, it wasn't based on this last decision.
It was, but it was based
And ask for
upon, when you
another
hold it in abeyance, agree to hold this while we continue to pursue legal remedy, because they don't want to get the money back and then pay it again based on a court opinion either.
And you won't have, for example, a dozen of them to pay right now, because each case is its unique case based on its own facts, and it's also on its own time frame. So ones that are filed, appeals that were filed in 2012 are getting very close to the time of being heard. Whereas there are a number of them that were filed by the deadline in the summer of 2013. Those are still going to be out there a ways. So before we would be in a position of having to decide whether to go to trial or whatever the case may be, there's still time there to see what happens in other cases. So we don't have to make those refunds right here, right now. But it would be foolhardy to just ignore those, because that day's coming if something doesn't change in the meantime. But it's not that we have to write a check next week. We only have one of those at this, well, 3 of those, basically, the Lowe's and the other 2.
In the interest of time for this evening, because we're bumping up against the end of the meeting, you've heard the recommendation from Council Zappa on perhaps pushing it to the 20th, allowing this other entity to review, and then we'll hold meetings in between time after that review, including with Attorney Fahey and this other counsel, legal counsel. Roger will be a party to that as well, so that by the time we need to make our decision, rather than talk in what might be's, we will have facts on the table at that time. So I would really entertain a motion at this point, and it may be to delay the Supreme Court appeal decision until May 20th, when we have more of the facts in, but requesting Manager Gerard to inform legal counsel to proceed with preparation of the appeal process pending final discussion.
So moved.
Or
Any other comments?
On just the motion or on the whole works?
You know, we want to move it forward, so I mean, we got a motion pending, so I mean, if it stick to the motion, that would be good.
Discuss after the motion.
All right. If there's no other comments, and there's a motion and a second on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Ernie, you wanted somebody could
Yeah, a
comment on
couple
the whole thing
things.
before we
Like
move.
Manager Gerard mentioned about $80,000. That's for this year. Now, you realize it, people, that's just this year. That's into perpetual, all the way down the line.
That's actually my calculation for what I'm going to be projecting for the 2015 budget, which we're just starting. For 2014, the figure looks like for 2014 that I'm going to have to come up with is another 80,000 for this year to amend my budget.
So the question I'm raising is that I keep coming up on dollars in that, and I think the May 20th will tell us what we want to do in that, and where that's going to end us in that. But in the meantime, we have these entities that, being the treasurer, I'm collecting money for and sending it to all these different entities, and all of a sudden, we're going to have to pull it back. My position is that maybe we should get all these entities in here along with our state and representatives in a meeting and sit down and say, hey, this is where we are, people. What can you do to help us in that? Because I have a feeling that most of them are not thinking ahead, not realizing what the total cost is in that. And more and more it's coming home to us, and it's coming home to everyone we can talk to. But how do you get it out to the entities that we're collecting dollars for and sending it out to them, that this is not just a one-time. If we lose it, you're losing it forever in that. There's no question about that. So I think we have to do something to get these people know, to get their head out of the sand, to set up straight and listen to what's happening. So I would look at trying to get all the entities in here along with our representatives and sit down and say, this is where we're at. So if we lose, that's.
Thanks, Ernie. Clerk Rattari?
Yeah, since we're bumping up against our deadline, I'd like to make a motion. We extend the meeting 30 minutes and remove the second forum discussion to the next meeting.
Support.
Good motion and support. Any other comment?
Aye.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is consider road committee recommendation for road crack sealing. Dave Wiegand has reserved time to speak on this, and you want to do that now, Dave, or you want to? Okay, and Manager Gerard, I'm turning that over to you.
Yeah, basically, this is an annual program that the Road Commission has. I'll be very brief. We've participated in it the last 2 years, and basically what it amounts to is sealing the cracks on those roads, as of, for instance, Warner, where some cracks have established themselves, and Warner to seal those to keep the weather out, to keep the road viable, basically, and to extend its life. Excuse me, Mr. Wiegand has been working on a register, a recommended register on behalf of the Roads Committee. We have submitted that to the Road Commission. We're awaiting their calculation of the proposed cost on that to come back to you with a recommendation for which we want to proceed with. And we should have that for your meeting on the 20th. Dave, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, just where this report may be different, and I don't know if you recall from the last
The board did not receive the report in their packet, Dave, just so you know.
We haven't seen it.
No, it wasn't in the packet because the Road Commission hasn't responded back yet with their costs.
Okay, what it is it's the recommended order of repair. It's just an updated version of the one you received a couple weeks ago. And it just addressed, I think, page 7 in that packet, which would be the same page of what you have. That addresses the order of repair for the crack seals and for the seal coats, or chip seal. And it's just been adjusted for the local factors. When it comes out of Pazer, it comes out in alphabetical order. So Allen Street would always receive attention first. What we did is put in those other local factors, so to put it in a realistic order for the roads that were used more. And that's the only difference.
Right. And basically what happens is we submitted that to the Road Commission. They'll calculate out based upon the square, well, the distance, basically. I won't say square feet or whatever it is, but the distance, the number of roads, they'll calculate the cost and get that back to us. Similar to what you saw last year. I think we put about $30,000 into crack repairs, crack seals last year.
So I think from the board standpoint, we need to actually have what's happening in front of us before we could make a decision to support or deny.
Correct.
And I think what this is it, contrary to what's gone on in the past years with the crack sealing, this is truly falls under the asset management guidelines for preventive maintenance. It only looks at those roads that are addressed for crack sealing.
I believe you, but I still want the documentation. I don't question your integrity on chip sealing at all, Dave. I just want to make that known. Randy, if you can provide that, and unless you're against some kind of a time frame or you need a response from the board immediately, I would like to have that information presented back in the board packet for the board.
It will be. It'll be in the board packet as soon as we get the calculations, the estimates back from the road commission, and then we'll, between Dave and I, will make a recommendation on how much we're recommending the board spend.
Thank you. Then we can dispense of that item until such time we receive that and move to 10E, which is considered budget amendment number 2014-04. Clerk Rattari.
Present to the board Budget Amendment 2014-04. It'll be referenced in the minutes as always in writing. The highlight of it is for the general fund portion, the BS&A software purchase and conversion. The board approved the project at the August 7, 2013 board meeting. The final invoice for training implementation was recently received. Payments for the purchase will take place over 3 years interest-free. However, the entire cost of the asset will be booked in the 2014 as an asset and now in use. The offset will come from fund balance, and the cost is $17,825. I move that.
Support.
Motion and support. Questions or comments?
I think just a comment is that if you look at our secretary cashiers, they now have a wand up in the front. They're starting to work on that, and that's part of it. And that's, hopefully, once we get that working, it's going to save some more time up there. So it's the beginning of trying to do some time saving.
Great. Thanks, Ernie. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the budget resolution. Clerk Rattari.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limita.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is 10F, the manager's report. I know you do have the written report for Manager Gerard in your packet. Manager Gerard, any other comments?
Just a couple of very brief comments. I'm glad to see some folks remain in the audience because I'll address some of their questions. First of all, Mrs. Johnson talked about Fair Avenue. The issue with Fair Avenue is not over yet. Even though we don't have snow on the ground is still frozen, the frost is still coming out, and the issue that we have there is not water line freezes, it's the sewer laterals, which are plastic. And the frost basically is still damaging those. So that's why the road has not been repaired, and that's why some of the other roads that you see that we had dug up have not been repaired, because we're still dealing with frost freeze. So I caution all of the residents to slow down, pay attention to the road, put your cell phones away, don't drink your coffee, don't put your makeup on, don't do any of that other stuff. Drive your car and pay attention. Okay, slow down, because that road damage is going to be there for at least the entire month of May. So just be cautious. Secondly, with the Iron Range roll that Mike spoke to, I've done some rough calculations basically, and I do support us assisting with that. Most likely that will be probably in the area of volunteers. We need some volunteers for 2 road crossings. The Iron Range roll will cross County Road 492. Just up from the old Township Hall by Lost Creek, and they will be crossing South Vandamoon Road. We will not be stopping traffic on those roads, so we'll be utilizing volunteers to stop the racers. The way this is going to work out, those of you that have ridden the Iron Ore Heritage Trail recognize that it takes about 2 hours or 2.5 hours to get to Nagandi. Coming back this way, it takes about 20 minutes. It's downhill all the way. So the first racers on bikes in particular are going to be here very quickly from the start of that race. So we need to have volunteers there, and that will last for probably 2 to 3 hours, because some of the slower, hopefully there'll be sweepers that will come with the last one of the runners, so we'll know when it ends, but it's going to run for about 2 or 3 hours. We've also talked with the Sheriff's Department. I don't know that we'll have the availability of law enforcement officers on there, but they are looking into that. That would be an extra cost item. Portable restrooms, that's not a big deal. We can cover that, for that one-day event. It's actually really only a half a day. I think they're starting at 1 o'clock up in Nagani, so it's, going to run from somewhere around 1 o'clock till about 4 o'clock, I'd guess, roughly. So you're talking roughly half a day. So we'd have 2 full-day rentals, and they would be similar to what we have at Kitty Park and Lions Field. We'd position those where, by the trailhead or wherever the committee decides to put those. The other possible issue that we might have is we might have to contract with Marktran for transit because we have very limited parking in that area, very limited. So we may look to designate a parking area somewhere off-site and then transport people utilizing Marktran, so you don't have to worry about crossing US 41. So we'll be working with the committee on that. Estimate probably in the neighborhood of about $200. It's going to be our portion, $200 to $300. So it's not a significant impact, but it's a big impact publicly. Let's see. Board members. This is for board members. I have had several board members indicate to me that they've been having issues with their laptops in terms of being able to manipulate it, get to access to programs, do things such as that. So I have been in touch with 906 Technologies, and I would like to have you email to me if you're interested in some training on utilizing your laptop and accessing programs and what's available and how to manipulate your laptop basically to best use. If you're interested in that, let me know over the next couple of weeks what your availability might be. 906 has agreed to set up training sessions for board members. So we could use this room right here to do that. So just let me know if you've had issues or if you'd like to participate in that. Otherwise, thank you for accepting the conceptual plan for Lions Field. We need to get that done so I can get some things ordered. It's not going to happen overnight. The ice rink boards have to be fabricated and shipped to us. The Kitty Park items have to be identified, what they're going to be, then we have to bid them. So I'm hoping we can do this yet this year. Not guaranteeing it. That's it.
I am.
I understand.
Any questions for Manager Gerard outside of the report? Clerk Rattari.
Yeah, what order are we in for the street sweeping this year?
We're one step closer than we were last year.
Okay, I guess.
I doubt it's going to happen. I doubt there'll be any. They've already been in the township on 41 and on the county primaries, but I don't think we're going to see them. Given the weight restrictions are still on, and given they only have 2 sweepers for the entire county, I don't think we're going to see them until probably late July or August.
Well, I'd like to make a request now that hopefully the snow season's behind us, but our pedestrian pathways are somewhat dirty, and see if we can. I think it only took them like 3 hours last year to sweep that whole pedestrian pathway, and it was good for most of the summer then. So
yeah, well, and we've already talked about that. We'll be trying to utilize the sheriff's department's work crew to do our pedestrian pathways and the crossing on US 41.
very good.
One question, talking about the pathway and on Warner and that, we had talked about some type of a piece of equipment to do some of this. Do you have a status on that?
Well, we're still looking at that, but that in and of itself has its own issues. One of the concerns that we have is we really can't just sweep it down into the roadway. That's an issue. The other issue is if you've seen this time of the year those brush implements going by, I'm sure you'll hear from residents about the dust cloud that they create and the dirt on everything. So we're attempting to do that with hands-on, utilizing the work crews that are available, the sheriff's work crews, to basically pick up that sand off of there and to get it out of the way. The other thing is those pieces of equipment are running used in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, new $120,000. So what we're trying to make do with what we have without spending that kind of money with what we're facing potentially with the tax tribunal.
Any other questions for Manager Gerard? Pete?
I think on that walkway, along that walkway on Warner Street, I think we should hire somebody to clean that off. I mean, here we did, put all the work in there, get the road fixed up, that did it right, put the lighting in there. I think we should get the thing cleaned up. I just hate to see it like that. I'd like to thank Roger Berry and Cliff Stammer. They're out there picking up garbage, And every year they're there. I know they're there because they call up and ask for more bags, so we're giving them white bags. But then people, along with a couple of their neighbors, are out there cleaning up the Schwimwood Park and along the highway and Forest Hill Drive and stuff like that, so I think they should be thanked. But I really think we have to do something with the walkways, so. And when you're picking up along the roads and stuff like that, be careful what you pick up. With this big push on meth labs and stuff like that, we really don't know what you're gonna be picking up, so just be careful. Thank you.
Any other questions for Manager Gerard? Seeing none, we're going to close the manager's report and move to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to address this board may do so at this time. Going once, going twice. It's gone.
3 times.
We'll close public comment, move to additional comments from board members. Remember, brevity is appreciated. Who would like to go?
You have 10 minutes.
Not anymore. No, Lynn. Lynn, go ahead.
Thanks. I need a clarification from Mike on the cleanup times on Saturday.
This Saturday at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're only going to do 2 hours.
Go up to the podium, Mike, so they can hear you.
Yes, actually, I should be doing this anyways. Yes, thanks for asking, Mr. Ant. This Saturday at 11 a.m. at Schwemwood Park, we're just going to be there for 2 hours, picking up garbage and getting it ready for the Iron Range Roll. So we'd appreciate anybody that cares about our first and only trailhead on the Iron Heritage Trail. We'd like to have you out there and make it a nice place for a trailhead for the Iron Range Roll. Thank you.
Anything special to bring? Mike, anything to bring? Yeah. Trash bags?
You know, I should
mean-
get you up here, and you should do this announcement. You're good at it. Yes, if you bring work gloves, we'll provide trash bags and some rakes and some tools. But basically, you want work gloves and things you can pick stuff up with.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Lynn, anything else?
Yep. Danny, you were talking about the fire exercise. That's this Saturday. What time is that happening?
Oh, it's not this Saturday.
Oh, okay.
It's the
Oh,
14th of June.
Sorry.
14th of June.
In the morning?
Yes, the mall won't be open, so it'll be. I think the exercise starts at 8 o'clock, and goes till noon.
Then just another question is, I need some board direction on. My direction to the Peter White Library Board was to ask for an alternative method of funding. And so their meeting is going to be, as Director Christensen said, 5 o'clock the night before, the night of our meeting, next meeting. So I don't know what direction you want to put me in. If I want to ask for an answer or just get meeting notes or make any suggestions or just whatever. I'm there to convey how you want to do that.
I don't know, since you brought it up at the end in board member comment.
Yeah, I just thought about it.
You know, I don't know that the board has ever provided direction on seeking alternative funding methods or anything else, just kind of, you know, what's going on with Peter White Public Library and bring back to us. And if you're having conversations with the Peter White Public Library Board and you want to bring back information, that's fantastic. If you can provide something in a written format so that we can put it into the agenda, that would be awesome.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Okay. Other board member comment?
Always have a comment. Going back to the tax tribunal and the report on these businesses when they say they're dark and they're vacant and everything else in that, and a little tongue-in-cheek in that thing. If they're dark and they're vacant, if you look in the window, they're saying there's nothing going on there. There's no one in there or anything else. If that's the case, why are we providing fire protection, police protection, and everything else at this point in time? Maybe that's something we have to start looking at. If the fire department gets a call from one of these entities and from the residential area, I would say go to the residential area first. Because the big boxes, or whatever you want to call them, are supposed to be vacant and empty and no one there, so let's do that. And as far as police, there's no one there, so why should they have to show up in that? And, they have a water problem, go in, shut off the water, and come the next day and fix it in that form. But don't go out of the way of doing it. And that's kind of tongue in cheek, but start looking at it that way and that. So maybe that's something we're going to have to do in some of this and that. So I've had my say.
Thanks, Ernie. Anyone else? Pete?
Quick thing is, what Ernie brought up earlier, I'm trying to set up right now for May 28th for Casperson and Kevila to have a meeting with the township here and other townships through Skype. That's the only, they're all in session, so we're trying to set up right now a meeting with them, but they'll be in Lansing and we'll be up here, and we'll have the different townships come in here to talk to, and you can ask them any of your questions. I'll know more about it tomorrow. I got a phone call on my phone here from a person that's supposed to be helping me. She's supposed to get some answers for today, and I thought I'd have it before the meeting, so I didn't, but I'll give you more information tomorrow and next day. Watching TV the other night, a little thing with Happy Carrot, and if that's the right word for it, but I come away from it thinking, we just signed a moratorium. We're not selling marijuana, but that's the outtake I took off of that program. So I come up and asked Randy about it, and he told me, no, we're not. They're selling, prescriptions for that, and also some pipes and stuff like that. He can explain it better than I can, but I think the people should know about that, what's happening over there. Thank you.
Dan, anything?
No.
Clerk Terry?
None.
I'd like to say welcome to WJMN TV3 as they celebrate their new location at 3165 Wright Street. I know that Manager Gerard was there for the grand opening, and I would just like to issue them a warm welcome into Marquette Township. Also, Catch the Vision Car Show and Cruise. The new posters have arrived, and they will be going up all around the township. If you want to participate, June 21st, and bring a canned good. It is a fundraiser to fill the local food bank as well. And so you'll see these posters going up around the township. We'd encourage you to participate. I would like to thank all the folks who participated in this evening's meeting. And again, you get the government you deserve, so let your voice be heard. We're always looking for people to participate whenever possible, and your opinions are important, whether it's through a phone call, through writing, through appearing in a board meeting, and sharing that information with us helps the board be more informed and make better decisions. So again, I encourage you to jump in. Good government is not a spectator sport. That having been said, thanks everybody. I'd entertain one more motion this evening.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.